Start off for automated introduction script. Hello and welcome. Hey humans. You are invited to attend this live stream show. Mr. Zeppo is now. Video game controller like video game controller presenting the Almost Daily Variety Gaming live stream show Extravaganza. Live now on both TikTok and Twitch. CTAG Studios proudly presents the Almost Daily Variety live stream show Extravaganza. A special presentation of the Almost Daily Variety Chaos Content Creation Zeppoverse project of 2-minute projects. Hosted by the incorrigible Mr. Zeppo, your new favorite fictional character from a book series that you have not read yet because it has not yet been published, due to the author suffering from decades worth of writer's block syndrome. Welcome to the Zeppoverse, a content creation project of 2-minute projects. Visit the many dimensions of the Zeppoverse at this link collection page, https://solo.to/mrzeppo, a variety chaos production of many projects combining public discourse talk show style podcast, gaming and content creation about creating content, in an episodic live stream show extravaganza format, featuring the self-commodification of the host. For your entertainment, Mr. Zeppo's TikTok Live and Twitch TV dual platform multi-broadcast show of many shows now with new and improved graphics. Featuring Chaos Variety Chaos Roulette Wheel of Variety multi-franchise roster of 2 games, and never quite enough time to play them all in. New and improved, totally rebooted iteration of this presentation now featuring new special variety completionist collection roulette mechanics featuring an actual roulette wheel of variety choice making, with treats and surprises randomly distributed throughout the week, and at least one new spontaneous idea and or hypothetical announcement per streaming session, plus Zeppoverse world-building moments sprinkled chaotically throughout. Attention viewers on both live platforms. Warnings, ampersand, disclaimers, ampersand, promotional items here. Please be advised, viewers must be 18 or older in order to join chat or give gifts, according to platform terms of service and end-user license agreement. Remember, we are here trying to create a safe viewing experience, and we invite you to participate by also following the platform community guidelines. Standards violators, bots, sales scripts, scams, trolls and stream sniping haters will be called out, openly ridiculed and banned. Warning. The opinions expressed on the social media accounts of the fictional character known as the incorrigible Mr. Zeppo are the very real, very raw, very radically unscripted, very genuine thoughts and considerations and public discourse opinions of the creative content creation artist behind the Zeppoverse brand projects. Please be advised that some of those opinions may possibly be interpreted as potentially unusual, eccentric, or even mildly controversial by certain individuals. Warning, the host of this show, Will Robotnik name redacted, otherwise known as the incorrigible Mr. Zeppo, reserves the creative license right to occasionally and quite randomly get just a wee bit political, on occasion, and duly reserves the creative freedom rights to do so at any time, on any of his same self-branded social media platforms about almost any subject, with the overt public commitment to balance his own real, raw, radically uncensored, ridiculously unscripted thoughts and conclusions with the disciplined civility of proper civilized public discourse practices of the highest standards. Disclaimer, everyone's free speech rights are respected here, with the important caveat that any and all downright dirty and disrespectful hate speech and threats or insinuations of harm are not and have never been included in standard free speech protections, rendering the issuer of such malarkey responsible for any and all public backlash in response to their bigotry, and also, any and all contributions to the chat that violate the platform's terms of service and or the end-user license agreement will be called out, properly mocked and ridiculed, and publicly corrected by this host on this and any other of his self-branded online platforms. And now, some shameless self-promotion. Please, dear humans, you are cordially invited to join the discussion and dive deeper into the exploration of insert subject matter here, redacted, by listening to Mr. Zeppo's podcast show, available on Spreaker.com and on the iHeartRadio network of platforms. Direct link to the show available on Solo to Mr. Zeppo. Also please, dear human audiences, you are also cordially invited to visit the official TikTok page for the Zeppoverse project here, https:// www.tiktok.com/@TheIncorrigibleMarzeppo when you do visit. Please be sure to investigate the content I have curated on my weblog tab for public discourse. So please, dear human audiences, please have fun interacting with your host, the incorrigible Mr. Zeppo, in real time here during the live stream show, and engaging with all of his Zeppoverse brand socials. Regarding donations, thank you for wanting to help and support this channel. All donations will go to upgrading the stream setup, and surviving the impending dystopian apocalypse. Thank you much confetti bursts and thunderous applause. Thank you. Please donate directly using secure donation website located here. Powered by PayPal. https://ko-fi.com/mrzeppo. Donations are what helps me keep my stream going. They are not required, but are greatly appreciated. Donations are non-refundable. By donating you are acknowledging you will receive no goods or services for your donation. Warnings, ampersand. Disclaimers, ampersand. Promotional items have been issued, you have been warned. And now, without further ado, for all that ado was plenty, please give a warm welcome to your new favorite host and fictional character from a book series you have not read yet, because he has not actually really started writing it yet. The weird, the odd, the eccentric, the one and only robot from the future playing video games like a human being in order to survive your local, self-imposed, casually hypocritical, preemptive political apocalypse. The incorrigible Zeppo. Insert robot audience applause sound effect here. CTAG Studios, the production company that exists entirely in Mr. Zeppo's imagination, proudly presents. Enter today's episode title here. Yin Yang Real, Raw, Radically Unscripted Yin Yang Podcast Yin Yang the Almost Daily Variety Chaos Live Stream and Content Creation Show Extravaganza Yin Yang Trump's Deranged Mission Yin Yang. Please stand by, gather round, and tell your fellow gaming enthusiasts about this fictional character's project of many projects and help this struggling content creating robotic from another dimension find the audience he needs in order to survive. End of the automated introduction script.
Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, and good night to you, friends. Hello, 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 and welcome, welcome, welcome. Please stand by as this live stream podcast crossover multi-platform event will proceed eventually. Now, the podcast audience is used to it jumping right in after opening bits. Because this is a live stream format, we're going to give a few seconds to see if we can't get a little bit of an audience going. We are connecting live to Twitch TV and TikTok. On both platforms, I am Mr. Zeppo with no period. That's MRZEPPO. In fact, if you type that into almost any social media platform, you should be able to find me. Now, there are a few rando platforms where there's some rando people that also use the name Mr. Zeppo. There's one Italian guy on some weird random website I've never been to. And I recently discovered some other Mr. Zeppo on TikTok who does not seem to be particularly active. But I digress. I am Mr. Zeppo on all platforms. I am a real, raw, radically unscripted. I am indeed a robot from a literary fictional parallel universe sent here to warn you about your own insanity, who then got stranded here like Ford Prefect, unable to return to his own timeline. I digress. Please stand by, we will begin shortly. DJ Zed, the original robot discotheque synthetica party host and digital engineer, is on the beats in the background. But this is a podcast episode, so we will be also launching the podcast intro to identify what this show is about. CTAG Studios, the production company that exists entirely in my imagination, proudly presents a production created, written, produced, performed, engineered, and stage managed by me, myself, and I, and the chorus of my imaginary friends. The incorrigible Mr. Zeppo's Almost Daily variety gaming, and content creation live stream show extravaganza. Crossover with the Sprecher platform podcast of many podcasts. And this is a little convergence episode. We're mashing together conversations with Chat AI, a special presentation of the Almost Daily Zencast, and Good Morning Trumptopia, another special presentation of the Almost Daily Zencast. If you've not heard either of these podcasts that are part of the Podcast of Many Podcasts project, head on over to solo.to/Mr. Zeppo and click on through right here to the Sprecher. I cannot roll my R's today. That's funny because I am a native R rolling maniac. I can usually roll them real good. Sprecher.com/show/Zencast. I think we have an updated link on the actual link collection page. And now, for the opener of the podcast show title sequence for them audio-only podcasters.
Good morning, Trumptopia. A special segment of the Almost Daily Zencast. Hosted by the incorrigible Mr. Zeppo. Let's talk Trump.
Hello, friends, and welcome back. This is indeed a crossover special event featuring Good Morning Trumptopia themes and our whole concept of conversations with AI mashed together for your entertainment and your edification. Hold on a second. Let me fix my webcam for the live stream viewers. For the audio-only audience listening to this in a not-too-distant future, my webcam does this weird thing where I set it to a particular aspect ratio, but for whatever reason, even though it's correctly set in its native driver app and it's correctly set in Streamlabs, when I launch Streamlabs, it gets a little wonky and decides to go rogue and then proceed to be all out of whack. So I got to go and open up a thing and adjust it. Anyways, hello and welcome, friends. I am your humble host, fictional character from a book series you have not read yet because I have utterly failed to write it for you in a performative fashion here on the live stream. But we will get to that soon. Pin on the cork board, which, by the way, is a visual metaphor for the crazy ideas we're trying to connect throughout the course of all this public discourse. There is a method to my madness. Okay, speaking of which, this is a feature of this particular segment, Good Morning Trumptopia. This is your almost daily reminder that that guy's a fraud. A proven fraud. A scam artist of a particular ilk. A liar. A cheater. And absolutely in no way, shape, or form is any of what he's doing patriotic. What he's doing is un-American and un-Christ-like. And there is no if and or buts about it. There's no two ways about that. Anybody out there preaching otherwise is gaslighting themselves and trying to gaslight you. All right, on today's episode, we're going to take a really close look at something relatively fresh on the Trumptopian landscape, although not really a new idea. I keep pointing out that this man is categorically un-Christ-like. Okay? Categorically. He exhibits and manifests the behavior of someone who does not, in any way, shape, or form, try to live up to the teachings and or examples of Yeshua, Christos, or as Americans prefer to call him, Jesus Christ. And yes, I like to be a bit silly sometimes. I am a theater nerd. I was a professionally trained theater professional, performance and tech side, so I get a little wacky sometimes. But my point remains valid. He is not doing God's bidding, in my humble opinion. He's out there doing his own bidding. And he's out there capitalizing, and by that I mean literally profiteering on the fact that he's somehow captivated the minds, hearts, imaginations, and dare I say wallets of American evangelical, non-denominational Christian electorate. And he's doing so in such a way that is simultaneously un-Christ-like, un-American, unpatriotic, unconstitutional, and in many instances, quite blatantly illegal. But that's not what we're going to talk about today. That's just the overall disclaimer, okay? I will not budge from that hill. And as I keep saying, no amount of gaslighting, no amount of third grade level bully tactics and name calling from anybody is going to change my mind. Sorry, not sorry. I'm going to sit here and use my free speech rights to call out his absurd misuse and abuse of Christian imagery and Christian ideas for as long as I'm able to. It's that simple. Why? Because if Jesus Christ himself were here right now, that's what he would do. It's not my fault that I was raised under the WWJD campaign. For the record, because many people out there seem to assume the extreme opposite for no logical reason whatsoever, other than that's what they've been instructed to do. I was raised in the church. I was a follower and believer and Bible-thumping, card-carrying advocate for the church, for Christianity at large, and for the teachings of Yeshua. And I guess you could say the chip on my shoulder is the simple fact that I feel betrayed. Betrayed by the culture, betrayed by the hypocrisy, betrayed by the way that American Christianity has been infiltrated and ultimately hijacked by various moneyed interests, not the least of which are all the ethno-nationalist fascist types. And I do not use those words lightly. Not the way some of our counterparts on the other side have used them in aggressive, false, weaponized accusation. Now, put a pin on the corkboard. That's one of the biggest problems, one of the most complicated issues we really have to face inside of this box. And that's that the reason, if I may be so bold as to speculate, the reason it seems that our brothers and sisters in Jesus have allowed themselves to fall for Trump's nonsense, hook, line, and sinker, is because our entire lifetime, the entire time I've been here, observing with critical eyes, applying critical thinking, asking the questions that I think need to be asked, and I've been doing this since Ronald Reagan was in office, which is when I first arrived here and got stranded on your bizarre little planet. I like to cosplay as a robot from another dimension because I'm writing a book series, or trying to anyways, about a robot from a parallel parallax universe in which robots evolved naturally first instead of squishy meat bags. But then, because of, evolutionary forces, became nearly identical to the human anatomy. But that's neither here nor there. The point being, I have been observing, investigating, questioning, thinking about politics and how it intersects or conflicts with organized religion in America since Ronald Reagan was in office. And I've been on the internet engaging with what is, from my end, sincere, earnest, open-minded public discourse, totally willing to hear other people out, but also absolutely standing up to and calling out things that make zero sense since before AOL existed. Why I'm not already internet famous, I don't know. And I'm not going to speculate about it because we can just get all kinds of paranoid right there. But I digress. This is what I want to actually talk about today. The most egregious, well, he's already topped himself. One of the most egregious things that I've ever seen come out of, quote, Truth Social, which is in and of itself a lie, because that's a propaganda machine. That is a Trump-topian, MAGA, political, ideological, promotional machine, to not use the other word that starts with the letter P and R. You know what I'm saying? Let's just call it PR. Instead of propaganda, let's call it promotional content. And as I've said before, and I'll have to point out again, he will indeed speak some truths in that nonsense, in that word salad, in that chaotic stuff. But he uses those nuggets of partially true statements. I've got something in my eye, damn it. To make sure, it's bait. It's bait, and he hooks you good, and then he reels you in. And then he shovels a bunch of malarkey down your throat and expects you to regurgitate it for him, in his defense, in the face of anyone daring to question what he's claiming. Okay? And I said this in my most recent episode, and I'll say it again to kick off this conversation with AI we're going to have about the specific post that I'm referencing. And like I said, he already outdid himself. When I saw this post that we're going to look at in a second, it was the single most outrageous example of I cannot believe he's really got the cajones to freaking put that out there on the internet and expect people to take him seriously. But also, I understand why people have already been prepared over the course of the last 11 years. Good grief, it's been so long. When will this chapter end? This timeline is spiraling out of control. Sorry, I digress. He then topped himself with the most delusional of conspiracy theories, which we won't address because it's already over the top and beyond the pale and nonsensical to me and highly improbable. His newest conspiracy theory meme that he's out there, it's science fiction, in my humble opinion. If I'm wrong, I need to see proof, right? He's the one making the claim, so he's the one who's got to show me the proof. I'm the one who's I don't know if I can buy into that without actual evidence, factually verifiable evidence. But let's step away from that one. I'm not even going to describe it. It's just newer to the best of my understanding than the one I do want to talk about. Join me, first of all, in jumping through the Streamlabs desktop portal to my desktop. Hello, Streamlabs. I'm using Streamlabs 1.17.2 for anyone out there wondering, and it works great on a Mac. You just got to be really careful about your output frames per second and kbps, and critically, the DPI on your canvas for everything. If you start off with the wrong proportions at high 2 density, it won't look good. I learned that the hard way and it took me forever to figure it out, and here we are. It finally looks gorgeous. Just wait until you see the newest of the live stream in video gaming content, which, by the way, sidebar, to all my gaming enthusiast viewers, shout out to you. I'm sorry that I've been kind of flooding the channels with political content, but this is a chaos collection of many different things, and the long form and short form video game footage must be mixed in with this political stuff because, well, the political stuff matters, especially when it gets this crazy. So let's jump through the portal. Welcome, welcome, welcome. That's enough of an introduction. Hello. Let's turn off these guys. Thank you for your service, you automated chat. I don't even want to call these a chat bot. It's not a bot. It doesn't have a conversation with people. I wish it were. When I first saw this in the Streamlabs dashboard on the website, I thought, does this give me an actual chatbot that will be able to no, it's just a timer with prefabricated things that I write. So that's cute. Not a chatbot. Anyways, let's check our settings over here on Streamlabs. Hello, I mean on the what is this? The stream manager for Twitch. Blah. That's how you know that all of my content is real, raw, and radically unscripted. I'll have flubby moments. I'll lose track of what I was trying to assemble in a paragraph, or I'll get stuck with too many conflicting thoughts at once in my head and won't know where to go. No one is telling me what to say. Everything I say, especially on the political spectrum of things that I'm questioning, criticizing, calling out, standing up to, are based on my own deep critical thinking processes. And it's not some Johnny-come-lately BS that's been spoon-fed to me. I have been thinking about this madness since Ronald Reagan was in office. Okay, so we're going to go talk to... Well, I already had the conversation with ChatGPT like a couple days ago. We're going to go reenact, I guess, this conversation with ChatGPT. Portions of it, because it went on for a bit. But first, let's trip on over to... Let me double check everything looks good. Hello. Disable performance mode. Hello, Streamlabs. Is this where I want the webcam on this side? Yeah. Actually, let's make this a little smaller so we're not blocking anything over here on Twitch. I don't think we will, but... Now I know for sure that it's probably not going to block any of the primary content once we get over there. Okay. This is pretty neat that I can do this. This blows my mind. I wish I had been doing this 1,000 years ago when I first started using the internet, but obviously we didn't have this technology. All right, get it together, Mr. Zeppo. What are we doing? We're going to go do TikTok roll call, see who's dropped on in. This has only been the opening portion of the thing, and I apologize to podcast listeners who are in a hurry. I know. You'll start listening and you're like, what is he going to get to the meat of the content? You know that you're welcome to skip ahead a little bit, but also I'm trying to balance two formats, audio podcast format and live stream format. And I've already gotten some criticism for it taking too long to get to the actual discussion. But we live in a world where our attention span has been disabused and forced into micro transaction level of short term, and then you stop listening. I'm trying to exercise a little bit of a more, hey, chill out, slow down, take a breath, hear me out. So I invite you to take a moment and just say hello to whoever's dropped in on TikTok. Heron, I don't pronounce that right. 1, 2, 3, 4 something. Flaco, RR Ramos, user with a long number. Enrique something. Rudolfo something. Denise something. Lilo1, El Bobambra, and Mauricio Acosta. Y'all have joined. Apparently we've had 54 viewers up in the TikTok house, but y'all are the ones who stayed long enough for it to register your names. Thank you for dropping in. Thank you for being here. Please don't be shy. Drop a message. Say hi. Ask your questions. And if you're here to troll me because you're out to blindly defend Trump, if you're a Trump apologist troll, you're more than welcome. I can do this all day. Chit-chat with you and debate the nonsense. I don't do it quite as well as that teenager kid. Fryman just joined. Hello, Fryman. Thank you for dropping in. There's a teenager whose name escapes me right now. There's a kid. He's probably in college. Or even older, but he looks so effing young to me. It's scary, but he's so well informed. He's so on top of the details that I'm always impressed. I'm a big picture guy, so if your gotcha moment is going to be to get me on some little itty bitty obscure detail, I'm going to ask you to take a step back and join me in looking at the big picture. But let's do a little bit of both right now. Let's head on over to, this is ChatGPT. I do not have a partnership with them. They are not paying me to do this. I'm just curious. I might as well be doing this over on Grok. Maybe we will. Maybe this is Conversations with Chat AI. We can do all the different chat AIs. Let's put a pin on that corkboard right there to go and visit Grok. If you don't know what Grok is, it's the already very wildly controversial AI that has called itself out on its own behavior that is embedded over on Elon Musk's revamped Twitter that he now calls X, right? I don't like the name X. It's ridiculous. Twitter was a ideal and perfect brand name, and he just went and ruined it. Okay, this is the meme we're talking about. Let's open it up. Obviously, if you're already on Truth Social, you've already seen this, and you're probably already ready to defend it. But Donald J. Trump, at real Donald Trump, check mark and everything. I don't know if he made this. No, apparently Fruit Snacks. Somebody named Fruit Snacks. That's a questionable choice in terms of screen names goes. But whatevs. We're not here to judge the book. We're here to assess the content of the characters, right? So, this meme out there is preposterous. Absolutely preposterous on so many levels. Quote, and I'm not in any way, shape, or form endorsing this meme, he's on a mission from God, and nothing can stop what's coming. Now, first of all, there's so many levels. Just first impression. Oh, also, fuck is this little guy in the background? Eh? I asked ChatGPT. We'll see what ChatGPT said. First of all, I have not previewed this conversation. I wrote what I wrote and then stepped away from the desk to let it answer. I don't know what we're about to hear, honestly. And I'm going to respond to it. In fact, I'm going to, because it doesn't talk anymore, or maybe it's because I'm using a slightly more advanced and they don't have that feature on this newer model. On older models of ChatGPT, there was a little voice icon, a little speaker icon, or maybe it was a microphone icon, or some little icon you can click and it would read its own answers to you in a slightly more realistic sounding voice than the one I'm going to use. I'm not going to read it because I'll trash my vocal cords. And I've got more content creation to do today. Stay tuned for some long form video game content dropping later. If those of you out there are like, where'd the video game stuff go? Why is he getting all political? I'm just trying to do a little bit of both. Why? Because I'm passionate about both areas. I'm passionate about my project over there on the FOMO of Xbox. Missed out on the 20 years of Xbox history that I'm now trying to overcompensate and make up for and having a hard time doing. But I'm also passionate about civilized public political discourse, because if we don't have these conversations, if we don't discuss these issues and try to question each other on them, what are we even doing as a political entity, right? As a political species. So many interrelated subjects. There are so many virtual pins on this corkboard. Please do invite yourself to give yourself a self-guided tour of my podcast, of different podcasts, by going to Sprecher. All right. First impressions. First of all, I'm always, for very, very sane reasons, in my humble opinion, deeply suspicious when anybody claims that they are on a mission from God. Now, this is coming from someone who believes that the entire human species is, in fact, here on a mission from the divine consciousness that gives life to all life. But those are two different sentences, aren't they? Let's put a pin on the corkboard for explaining what I mean. Obviously, we all sort of generally understand what someone might mean when they say, I'm on a mission from God. Typically, it means they feel that they are answering the call to defend, apologize for, advocate in favor of, promote, and, I don't know how to spell this word, which means I don't know how to pronounce it correctly, proselytize for their organized religious ideology. And here's where first problem, my first big issue. Based on a lifetime's worth of seeking, questioning, praying, meditating, listening to philosophers and spiritualists and religious thinkers and even ideologues, I've come to the personal conclusion that the divine entity, whatever that singularity of all caps life really is, that being, that power, that energy, that frequency, that cosmic force that we commonly refer to as God or as one of the many gods, because there's 3,000 gods being worshipped in by the human species, and that's one of my favorite memes. I don't have it in front of me, so I'm gonna paraphrase it a little bit off, but there's over 3,000 gods being worshipped by humanity. But sure, go on. Keep explaining to me how all of them are fake except the one you got indoctrinated to believe in. That's my version of that. Someone else wrote something slightly different. But yeah, that's the irony, right? Every religious war has been a mission from God. Putin thinks he's on a mission from God to reunite the Russian Empire. Netanyahu thinks he's on a mission from God to, pick your favorite way of describing what he's doing to the Palestinian people. And in no way, shape, or form is that a defense of the bad actors involved in either conflict, right? That's a really petty, anti-intellectual, anti-humanist, anti-empathy tactic to say, if you oppose those who are committing atrocities, then you must be automatically, ideologically subscribing to whoever, the bad actors are on the opposite side. Of course not. If there are really schmazzies in Ukraine, then they should be all found and accused of that with evidence, with due process, given their opportunity to defend themselves in court, and given the opportunity to reform, given the opportunity to realize that their ideology is nonsense so that they can change, right? Otherwise you become what they are. But that's a whole pin on the corkboard. We've talked about that before, and we'll talk about it again. My problem here, it's a huge collection of red flag. Plural. It's a huge collection of crazy red flaggery, to make up a term, when anyone says, well, I'm on a mission from God to do X, Y, and Z. Especially if X, Y, and Z sounds like something that, and it can be any of the prophets here, but since we're in America and we're talking about a guy who claims to be a Christian while also rejects and denies being a Christian, he's that two-faced, you guys. He holds Bibles upside down, which if Barack Obama had done, I guarantee you, based on their previous track record of behavior and antagonism towards him and racial bias against him, they would have said that's proof that he is in league with the devil. But that's just a little tiny hiccup. No one cared. But he's literally, posed for photo ops in front of churches after doing the most unchristlike thing of using the state's police brute force to remove peaceful protesters and clergy and members of that congregation from the property so he can make the photo op. He's literally said out loud, I am not a Christian, and I'm not making this up. It's on tape. Go look it up and find it for yourself. I digress. It's always a red flag when anyone claims to be on a mission from God and then is doing ungodly things. Like, I don't know, giving ongoing tyrannical wars the green light, doing absolutely nothing to end those wars, which he claimed he could put an end to in 24 hours before he even got sworn into office. How many days has it been? We're on our way rapidly to day 200, and I'm going to enjoy that day because of a particular post on social media for which I was mocked and ridiculed, which will age like fine wine. But I digress. So there's that, right? Just from the get-go, I don't care who you are. If you come at me with, I'm on a mission from God, and then that mission involves doing uncharitable, dehumanizing, mean, brutal, vile, petty, unchristlike things, then I'm going to call you out on that, because that, my dear friends, is malarkey. The other thing that's weird and hilarious, again, these are just my first impressions of the meme. We'll get into the discussion with what our AI friend has to say and this is the advanced model that can do live research. This isn't the older model that was like limited to whatever the database was from like 10 years ago or whatever. The MAGA cult, it started with the QAnon, to the best of my understanding. The QAnon weirdos, whatever happened to QAnon? Disappeared. Gee, I wonder how curious it is that QAnon just disappeared right around the exact same time that a ultra wealthy preacher with a bad track record and a little bit of bigotry mixed into all his preaching got exposed as being someone at the core of hosting the original servers where the QAnon content originated from. It's not tea, it's coffee, but the meme remains. They've been saying nothing can stop what's coming since he announced he was, since QAnon kicked up and started supporting him back during the first admin. And he's achieved nothing. What is coming, you guys? Besides an endless array of absurdly ridiculous memes that don't really add up to anything, haven't solved any real problems. He didn't build the wall. He didn't arrest her. He didn't lock her up. I mean, even the things he achieved were weird and off-brand. I'm still throwing my hands up in the air about Operation Warp Speed. Big Pharma bad! Big Pharma bad! Operation Warp Speed, yay! It's just same like with the ivermectin, to go off on a tangent. Big Pharma bad, but ivermectin, or whatever you pronounce it, made by Merck, a big, giant, epic baddie of Big Pharma, that's good. Pick a lane, yo. Okay, I digress. So, first impressions, done. Let's have my iMac desktop voice speech thingy read what I asked ChatGPT to talk to us about here in this. Let me make sure I've got that other mic open so it sounds fun and echoey and Robotnik-like. Because all robots... Hello. Testing. Hold on, let me check something. Sorry. I apologize, especially for the... Ooh, that's a fun sound effect. Okay. Oh, I'm actually in sync. Cool. All right, let's let's go over to back to the desktop. And we'll pop on over to ChatGPT. We're going to have it tell us have it read what I asked it. And yes, I uploaded the meme so that it could analyze the meme itself visually. Where's my thing? Speech. Here we go.
Trump recently posted a controversial meme that claims he is supposedly on a mission from God. Could you please analyze the meme and research the issue of a politician claiming to have a divine mandate in the context of Western-style secular democracy, and the well-established hypocrisy of American evangelical Christianity, the rise of ultra-wealthy Christian preachers, the normalization of massive and very expensive megachurches, and the infiltration of overtly-racist ethno-nationalist ideology into American versions of Christianity, and politicization of religion despite the foundational separation of church and state in this country. Additionally, can you find out what the strange frog-like creature lurking in the shadowy background to the left of the meme might possibly mean? I have attached the meme in question. Please research the history of such claims of direct godly directives in politics both in America and globally throughout history, the use of religious ideology in manipulating people, and the potential problems with the pseudo-Christian white ethno-nationalist movement growing in both American and global politics.
Okay, let me respond to my own prompt and give you a little bit of context in my thinking. The following is a verifiable historical fact. Fear-mongering about demons and hell and promoting an elitist idea, and I choose my words very carefully, promoting an elitist idea that one special chosen man, and I'm not talking about the prophets from like the founding of the religions, I'm talking about people who do this after the fact, or in detachment from, claiming to be on a mission from God and fear-mongering about a targeted group of otherified people over there that must be all monolithically pure evil because of X, Y, and Z is one of the oldest known, historically recorded forms of psychological manipulation that has ever existed. I wish I could switch back and forth easier. That sort of thing is literally so old, it's got whiskers, to borrow an old joke from the Hudsucker Proxy. That gag is so old, it's got whiskers on it. It is foundational psyop. That tribe over there is pure evil, and I am pure good, for I've been chosen by insert name of divine thing here to go and obliterate them. That kind of psychological manipulation is based on fear and on, divine retribution, and is older than the establishment of Christianity itself. It predates the writing of any of the books of the Bible, and it has been used successfully to promote violence, invasions, wars, and all kinds of other pillaging of targeted others. It is explicitly founded on the idea that I alone can do nonsense because I have permission from above, and anybody who opposes me is not worthy of being treated like a human being. Does that sound like what God wants? Is that really what people think the divine being is all about? Do people... How can critically thinking people actually abide by that, is my question, right? Even in my youngest days, even when I was really young and wholeheartedly attempting to be a Bible-thumping defender of Christianity, I was like, well, that's sus AF. That doesn't add up. God's supposed to be loving and kind and protective and, but go unalive that tribe because they're pure evil, and don't you dare listen to any of their words when they go, why are you doing this to us? We're just trying to do our own thing over here, and predates the known organized religions as we know them, right? This idea is older than dirt, to borrow a phrase. All right, what else did I say over there? Let's pop back on over to ChatGPT. Okay, the frog thing is a whole nother issue, and he's going to talk about it. But there's so many things going on in American Christianity that are un-Christ-like. Wealth doctrine is a lie. If Jesus showed up right now, he'd be like, the hell are you doing in my name? Hoarding wealth and refusing to help the most disadvantaged. I'm sorry, but I'm not sorry. That's hypocrisy. That's sacrosanct. That is, what's the word they like to throw around whenever they're just angry at people for being unable to bend the knee? That's sacrilege. For all the reasons, right? And I don't mean to turn this into a whole Bible thumping session, but I used to be a Bible thumper. I know all the tricks. I've forgotten more about the Bible than most people who try to argue with me about the Bible have ever actually bothered to learn. Let us proceed. Let us see what the first response was. Oh, the first response was organizational, which is interesting and, speaks to the developments in this particular chatbot or, research bot or whatever you want to call it.
To explore this complex topic thoroughly, could you please confirm a few things? Are you looking for a formal written report, an article-style summary, or a detailed bullet point analysis? Should the research prioritize recent post-2016 American political developments, or also include deeper historical context and global comparisons? Would you like scholarly sources, for example, academic journals, media commentary, or both? Are you specifically interested in identifying the cartoon character, the frog-like figure circled in the meme, or understanding its symbolic or meme-related implications in political discourse? Once I have this clarification, I'll begin the research for you right away.
Okay, so I found it really interesting. It just proved to me that it actually visually analyzed the meme. I didn't mention that it was circled. In fact, when I was writing the prompt, I hadn't uploaded the meme yet. So I wasn't really, I didn't really think about even mentioning the circle. And as you saw, I don't mention the circle. It's just there. So that's interesting. And it was a bit of oh, wow. I mean, I know that AIs are capable of visually analyzing stuff, but this is a chatbot. So it's clearly flexing that it's much more sophisticated than its previous versions. And, I'm familiar with what its basic capacities have been because I've been obviously having lots of conversations with it. I'm kind of annoyed with myself that I have not broadcast these yet. I don't know why I don't do them in real time. Anyways, it's not about being intimidated about what it says. I literally will have the conversations with this thing, but not read what it says, right? Because it doesn't speak out loud when it pumps them out. It just starts dumping text. And I can barely see what the text says with my eyeballs. That's why I need these things. All right. So I prompted back the following. Let's let it read it to us, or let the Mac desktop thing read it to us.
1. Let's start with a detailed bullet point analysis and work our way through the article-style summary and formal written report in subsequent phases of this conversation. 2. Please include deeper historical context and global comparisons. After initially analyzing and summarizing the most recent highlights. 3. Please utilize both scholarly sources and media commentary. 4. I would like to understand the cartoon character's symbolic or meme-related implications in political discourse.
All right. I'm sad that the cadence on this speechy thing is sometimes a little weird, and it's gonna sound awkward at times, especially when there's numbers involved and or citations, and I apologize for that. The former, although now missing, because it's not down here, the former chat voice from ChatGPT was much more natural sounding, and I kind of miss it, but oh well, maybe they'll bring it back later. Okay, this was its initial response, and then it like dumps out this thing. So it gave a response and said, "Please hold, I'm thinking," kind of to the effect. I think I'm speculating here, but let's see what it said.
Great. I'll begin a detailed bullet point analysis of Donald Trump's recent meme claiming a divine mission, focusing on the implications of religious messaging in Western secular democracies. I'll explore recent and historical examples of political figures claiming divine mandates, the politicization of religion in the US, the contradictions in American evangelical Christianity, and the rise of ethno-nationalist Christian movements. I'll also investigate the symbolism of the frog-like cartoon character in the meme and its possible relevance in modern political meme culture. I'll let you know as soon as the analysis is ready. Research completed in 7 meters, 32 sources, 149 searches.
Okay, I'm fairly certain that's supposed to be minutes, not meters. But our little desktop voice is a little goofy. Okay, so this is, I still have not actually read what it says there. Let's take it one chunk at a time, so that we can and take our time to address it instead of having to wait all the way to the end. We're going to go one bullet point at a time and talk about it. Here we go.
Divine mandates in politics and the rise of Christian ethno-nationalism. Trump mission from God meme analysis. Meme overview. Trump's Truth Social post is a dramatic black and white image styled like a movie poster. It places Trump center stage, walking down a rain-slicked city street in a long coat and large tie, backlit by street lamps. Across the top it proclaims he's on a mission from God, and at his feet appears the message, "Nothing can stop what is coming." Analysts note this co-opts the famous line from the Blues Brothers' TheIndependent.com, the mix of a sacred-sounding mission statement with the apocalyptic phrase "nothing can stop," familiar from QAnon law. Latintimes.com gives the image a conspiratorial, chosen one tone. The visual style, dramatic lighting, large bold text, emphasizes Trump as a solitary, divinely guided figure walking toward an inevitable destiny. Latintimes.com, TheIndependent.com.
Okay, obviously Latin Times is the LA Times. Pause. I get it. For a bunch of people, all of this is BS because mainstream media is fake news. Those people must be suffering some deeply increasing paranoia, because if you really think about that claim, all right, and I've discussed this before on social media. I think I've done podcasts where I go off on sidebars and discuss this. I should probably come back full circle, pin on the corkboard, and do a whole episode about this. I'm not going to blindly defend any media outlet. Like all human institutions, nothing, in my opinion, can be said to be a monolith of good or bad, one way or the other. Because people, as individuals, are not monoliths of pure good or pure evil. Anyone who thinks that way is literally dehumanizing others and themselves. I don't care who you are. I don't care what political ideology you subscribe to or have been indoctrinated into subscribing. I don't care what religion you grew up in. I don't care whether you stayed or left or whatever. You are a complicated human being full of positive impulses and negative impulses, full of the capacity to step into your divine light and the absolute ability to lower yourself into the darkness. I'm a yin-yang kind of guy. That's why I use the yin-yang in titles all the time, just to throw it around, right? And this is based on a lifetime's worth of observation, critical thinking, and questioning about the claims being made by organized religious ideology, etc., etc., etc. Okay, so as he points out, there's some interesting things that the analysis points out. This is styled like a movie poster. That can't be an accident, right? Movie posters convey lots of information about the movie in a tight, compact, visually efficient fashion. Some would say that qualifies as the PR word. Promotional material. And or the other one that we said we're not going to use too often because then we'll get flagged. Right? Okay. QAnon, we already talked about a little bit. But again, whatever happened to QAnon? Whatever happened to QAnon? Whatever happened to all of the really way over the top, difficult to blindly believe for anyone with genuine critical thinking skills, conspiracy theories that they claimed would come true that never did? Just like he never lifted a finger to either investigate her or skip due process and actually just lock her up. He never did that. He never really built the wall. Mexico didn't pay for it. Those are just things that Trump, that we can be like, boom, 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 boom. I don't have a list of QAnon conspiracy theories that were prophesied to come true, either during the Trump administration or in subsequent years. But I do remember going, that's interesting. I guess I'll have to see if that comes true. And then nothing. I guess we could have a whole other discussion right here. Should we open up a new... Nah, we'll get sidebarred. And I'm not trying to make this a 5-hour episode. So put a pin on the corkboard. We should come back full circle and do a special What the F Happened to QAnon episode. Because if that doesn't give away the game, that it was all nonsense, that it was all psyop, that it was all an attempt to lure people in to garner and hoard political power, I don't know what else proves it. We'll come back to that. Pin on the corkboard. What the F happened to QAnon? And how many of the QAnon... In fact, you know what I'm going to do? Hold on a second. I am going to open a new chat tab. Here's what we're going to do. We're not going to read it. Let me think of a way to write this. Oops, I can type. Alright, sorry that was a boring ass moment right there, especially for people listening on audio only format. I'm typing the following thing into... Hold on, I'm gonna have it read it to us. Come on, I'm spell checking. I guess that wasn't the question. Oh, wait. Hold on. I'm very careful about I try to be very careful about the way I word prompts. All right, let's. Oh, I misspelled QAnon. Okay. I'm just gonna let it read this so we know what I'm asking it.
Using all available research and information at your disposal, could you please explain whatever happened to ANN, recap how they came into existence, and then please explain how or why they seem to have suddenly disappeared from the American political landscape? Finally, could you put together a list of the prophecies made by QAnon? Did any of them ever actually come true?
Okay. We're gonna upload this and then tab back over to the conversation we're already having. And then see further. Boop, boop, boop. It's going. I didn't read it. Tune in the not too distant future for that conversation with AI and Good Morning Trumptopia doubleheader episode. We might do that tomorrow. Oh no, tomorrow I'm taking the day off. Tomorrow's Monday, right? I think I'm gonna make Mondays my Sundays and Mondays. I'm on now because I was feeling the urge to do this and the other thing. And Sundays, I think I'm going to do like spiritually themed talk show stuff, but also some gaming content to like relax and unwind and blah, 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 blah. But Mondays, I think from now on, random programming note, I'm going to probably be completely dark on live stream, on social media, on TikTok, on Facebook, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Because I'm realizing that even though I'm feeling motivated and passionate about all these things, I am increasingly, that's the word I meant to say, increasingly feeling burnt out. There you go. Real, raw, radically unscripted. Sometimes I fumble my sentences. I'm sorry. All right, so tune in for that. That's going to sit there in the background. We're not going to look at it. It probably just asks some clarifying questions, which I will probably... Well, you know what? We'll leave it and we'll come back to that live to show you that like I'm not cheating, right? We'll leave it whatever it's at, and it's probably asked some clarifying questions. Second note, it just occurred to me. I want you to understand that I don't blindly accept what this AI is saying. We've had many examples of AI going off the rails and basically hallucinating, providing incorrect information, insisting that it's true. So, as with any source, when you tune in to listen to what we talk about here, please don't just assume that it's completely fake, and don't just assume that it must be 100% true. If you've got questions, ask them. If you've got suspicions, or if you want to verify for yourself, go look it up. All right, we're going to pause here for a second and see if there's any questions. TikTok, we got nothing. Sorry, that was Twitch. God, they both start with a T. My brain spoonerizes them as whole words. TikTok, we got Andrea, Duvion something, Jimmy Hernandez, Haley, Patty Rodriguez, Al blah, 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 always handy, a symbol I can't make out. Rock on, thanks for dropping in, 81 viewers so far. No questions, no, oh. Ken is Elgato. Sorry, I mispronounced that. I have a hard time with people's oddly spelled internet names, and I apologize. And you hoodles, please do feel free to comment, question, troll, whatever you want. I can handle it. And of course, as I say in my opening scripted, that's the only bit about the show that is genuinely scripted. And I share the script with you, as we do it usually, unless I'm distracted or something. Sorry, my nose is getting all... I was out earlier and I think I picked up some allergens. I'm going to mute my face for a minute here on the live stream. Or at least on the Twitch side. I think on the TikTok side we'll leave it. Actually, I'm just going to do it in general. So I can scratch my face and not look gross on TV. Okay. Blah, blah, blah. Let's go. Let's do this. Nah, let's put them both back. All right, back to the thing. So the very next bullet point that our little AI friend wanted to talk to us about is apparently what this... Ooh, sorry, I just bashed the camera with my phone, with my glasses. I I think a lot of people didn't even see that there is this character lurking weirdly in the background. And I've noticed this character around forever. Obviously, memes can both be interpreted in many ways. And as with any bit of content, any kind of content, whether it's literary, whether it's a movie or a comic book or a video game or conspiracy theory, there's a gap. There's always a gap. It's called the, what is it called? I forget now. The author's fallacy or something. There's a gap between the intended meaning that any creator may have when creating a piece of content, whether it's a sculpture, a painting, a story, etc., and then what the audience interprets it to mean. The reason there's a gap is because the way our brains work. We bring to the act of perception our own biases, our baggage, our filters, our limitations, our boundaries, our etc., etc., etc. Anyways, let's see what ChatGPT has to say about this after analyzing that meme. Here we go.
Frog figure, P, in background. The meme's background also contains a small cartoon frog image, circled in screen captures. This is Pete the Frog, originally a benign webcomic character. Pete became a widely used internet meme, but after the 2016 election it was co-opted by far-right groups. The Anti-Defamation League labels Pete a hate symbol due to its use by white supremacists. LatinTimes.com. LatinTimes notes Pete is small, but out of place in the photo. LatinTimes.com, a hidden Easter egg that alerts viewers to alt-right coding. In context, its inclusion likely signals that the post was crafted by or appealing to extremist online audiences, especially given Trump's history of sharing QAnon-style memes. LatinTimes.com. LatinTimes.com.
Okay, so that assessment does rely entirely, apparently, on LA Times journalism. Again, I get it. For a lot of people who would already be in a defensive position wanting to support this meme, it's easy to just be like, well, they're all liars. They all work for Satan. It's all fake news. That's regurgitating conditional thinking, though, right? I've already explained how I find that difficult to believe for many reasons. Not the least of which is that human beings are not monoliths of absoluteness. Absolutist thinking is ever so rarely absolutely true. In fact, absolutist thinking tends to be found at the root of problematic ideology. Anytime one group has oppressed and tyrannically abused another group, you will find at the core of that logic being used to create the permission structures to make that sound okay, absolutist thinking about the other group. Just saying. Okay, so I digress. It seems that, according to reporting, according to journalists at the LA Times, this frog, while originally a benign character from some comic somewhere, has been co-opted and used as a dog whistle symbol by racists. And as we know, the white nationalists and racists and wannabe neo-schmazis and ethno-nationalists, they love their out-in-the-open coded dog whistles. There's a bunch of it, right? Which just makes it hilarious and adorable when they lose their minds at someone doing something similar in retaliation. But that's just fundamental hypocrisy to all supremacist thinking. Which brings an interesting random thought to mind. I haven't done this episode of Totally Irrelevant Media Review yet, although I have teased it. I just watched Captain America Brave New World, and in prepping for that, I went back to the Falcon and the Winter Shoulder. The Winter Shoulder. That's a fun Freudian slip. The Winter Soldier, because his robot arm, shoulder. First, random, completely irrelevant criticism. That title should have been The Black Falcon and The Winter Soldier. Not just because that's who that character is before he becomes the new black, not superpowered Captain America, but because it would have also read and flowed and sounded better. Because the two names would have had the same cadence. And I'm a stickler for that sort of nonsense. But that's not what I wanted to bring up. In the one of the random episodes that I went back and was like, did I finish watching this? And there were 2 episodes that didn't have the little view bar completed, and that must have been a hiccup because in the middle of rewatching them, I realized, oh yes, I do have memories of seeing all this. But what's the name of that goofy character that wears the purple ski mask? He was a bad guy, but they broke him out, and the Wakandans are mad. I forget what his name is, but the rich guy. Then they're like, we need his help. We absolutely have his help. He's really against the Flag Smashers, the group in that show that is rebelling against what the global governments are doing to try to forcibly repatriate or relocate people who returned after the snap. I know, crazy complicated, and if you're not into Marvel, you'd be like, what the F is he talking about? Is it Zemo? I know that it starts with a Z, and that always makes me cringe a little because my character is a Z-named character. And I chose that specifically because not a lot of characters are named with a Z, or a Z, as the Americans say. But I digress. He's got a delightful little bit of dialogue. It's not quite a monologue, but he's got this exchange where he's sort of lecturing Bucky and Sam about the problem, the real problem with the Flag Smashers. And in his opinion, super serum and the ability to infuse one's own body with superpowers through scientific means is inseparable from supremacist ideology. And he just goes off on an interesting little tangent about it. And that's the thing. That's an allegory for, in my humble opinion, the misuse of religious vilification of others and self-aggrandizement. Right? Now, that was the whole moral quandary of that show. The Flag Smashers thought that they were heroic, underdog rebels fighting against an oppressive colonialist imperium trying to dictate who lives where and what and how and blah, blah, blah. And they wanted one people, one world, no countries. Interesting idea. Challenging given that we're so deeply entrenched in our nation statehood identity as members of different nation states. But they believed themselves to be the good guys, right? Defending the little people against the oppressive, tyrannical governments bossing them around. Now we get full circle. Sam gives a really great speech at the end, the final episode. And I want to just sort of invoke those 2 bits of dialogue for anybody who does know them, and invite anybody who doesn't, go watch the show and pay attention to those 2 moments. I couldn't give you the exact episode and time breakdowns. I don't have it in front of me. It's not something I prepared for this. But whatever he's a duke or a baron. He's super rich, right? And he's got because of he's old money. He's family money. He's got a title. I forget what is he? I forget, but it doesn't matter. I'm a big picture nerd, not a little itty bitty nuanced. Not nuanced. That's the wrong word. Itty bitty detail nerd. You put those 2 speeches together, and you've got some very interesting things to think about. Sam points out I mean, despite the fact that they don't really disagree, I mean, they kind of give a little pushback, him and Bucky, to his thing. And they're like, well, what's the original Captain America's name? I'm totally blanking now. They're like, well, Captain America, he wasn't a supremacist. And he's like, yeah, but there's only ever really been one of him, right? Is this villain's response. He's not really a villain so much in this series, but he's a guy that's in trouble with everyone because he was a villain or had done villainous things. But he points out that, like, there was only one of him, Steve Rogers. There it is. My brain was a little slow on pulling that back up. There's only been one Steve Rogers, and everybody else, from Hydra to the Flag Smashers, he's trying to argue / accuse them of. And they don't at first come off like they are supremacists, but what's her name, the curly redhead lady with all the freckles, and freckles are awesome, by the way. No one hate unfreckled people. You're just jealous. You're just jealous and petty. She starts to slide down the slippery slope of self-supremacy. That's always the danger at hand. Always. But I digress. So those two speeches taken in tandem together, what's his name says about, the serum and the superpowers leading to a kind of supremacy ideology of like, we are better, so y'all just better fucking bow down. And then what Sam says at the end, when he's like, stop and think, you crazy politicians. And I'm butchering the paraphrasing. But the one thing I think I got correct, he's like, because the politician, as politicians tend to do, says to Sam, you just don't understand. And he's got the very brutally biting comeback, I'm a black man carrying the stars and stripes. Don't talk to me about not understanding. There is some power to that, not just in the comic book world, but in the history of America. And then he goes on to point out to them, to the collection of politicians, that he's just saved. He's just rescued them. And he points out to them, because they never stop to think, that woman, I forget her name, because I don't know her very well as a character. Like, that was the first time I'd ever seen her character. By the way, this is a thing that comic book people sometimes get a little offended by. I am a huge comic book fan, but never had the luxury of being able to afford comic book collection. So I admired from the distance of the bookshelf at the store or the library or the comic book shop. I love the art. I've always loved the imagery, and I wish I could draw that way. I always kind of wished I had the confidence in my drawing skills to become a comic book artist. Maybe one day I'll finally get around to making that one of the central pillars of this podcast, of this live stream show / podcast, which it used to be. That's a whole pin on the corkboard. But my apology is, I know all these characters from the cinematic universes. Please don't judge me and shame me. I think it's wonderful and amazing that they, despite the fact that they've had to change a bunch of things, or that they've maybe not always succeeded in staying as true as they could have been, you gotta admit, it's awesome that they made comic book movies and comic book shows, and that we are currently living, despite all the haters and trolls that were never really into it, or, never really understood that comic books haven't gone woke. They always were. It's laughable. Like, unrelated, but I recently responded to someone complaining that Bruce Springsteen has gone woke. I'm like, I'm sorry, buddy. Bruce Springsteen, tongue twister of a fucking name, the boss, has not gone woke any more than Yeshua Christos, Jesus Christ, suddenly, magically went woke. Everybody making claims like that never understood the effing words of either of those two people. And the comic book world has already had that debate. Comic movie haters, who are like, really, made it woke. You never understood the comic books. Sit down and pay more attention. Maybe. before you go mouthing off about stuff that you clearly don't comprehend. Comic books have always been that way. Now they're subtle, and they wrap it up in art and graphics and kapow and punchies and action adventure stuff. But comic books have always been about the underdog, about fighting and standing up to and calling out abuses of power, etc., etc., etc. Let's put a pin on the corkboard. We got to do a whole special, almost daily Zencast episode about the absolutely absurd use of woke by the anti-wokers, because they make themselves hypocrites. Most of them are self-proclaimed Christians. I digress. Okay, so many pins we're adding. We're gonna have to come back and do this QAnon episode. Blah, 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 blah. Here we go. Let's move on to the next. I don't have a good crossover connection here to this next paragraph, but let's hear what the chatbot said.
Politicians invoking divine mandates. Trump is not alone in wrapping political ambition in religious language. Christian right figures often declare their campaigns a calling. For example, Rick Perry publicly stated that God had chosen Donald Trump to be president. Dornsife USC,
Laughable.
invoking the idea of a divine mandate. Michelle Bachmann said in 2011 she felt a sense from God calling her to run for Congress. News.com. In 2022, a Ron DeSantis campaign ad portrayed the Florida governor as a divinely ordained fighter sent by God to take the arrows for families. People.com. These instances reflect a recent pattern of politicians, especially on the Christian right, framing their leadership as God-directed.
Okay, the fundamental problem with that whole idea, beyond what I already said about it being a form of psychological manipulation that literally predates the invention of Christianity and either of the other postmodern religions as we know them, predates the writing of the Bible, predates the writing of the Old Testament, predates the writing of most of the religious texts that we know now, because, there's millennia upon millennia of endless spiritual, tribalistic warfare between different rival peoples because of ideological incompatibilities in their spiritual systems. Setting all that aside and analyzing it from inside the box of the New Testament, of the scriptures, of Christ's teachings, and setting it inside the box of American constitutionalism, it is hypocritical and un-American and un-Christ-like. Full stop. Full stop. The teachings of Jesus are not about imposing theocratic ideological constructs on the nation state. And anyone attempting to twist and turn and corrupt Christ's teachings in that way is gaslighting themselves and whoever's buying into it. And no amount of bullying is ever going to get me to change my mind. I've spent a lifetime. I'm not some Johnny-come-lately that's never read the Bible. I'm not some God-hating atheist that just, quote, hates Christians. I am a believer in the Yeshua, Christos. I am a person who strives to commune with the divine entities beyond the scope of our petty, ego-driven, human, ideological nonsense that we've invented about them. And after a lifetime of questioning, a lifetime of I don't want to use the word research because I don't have the capital investment or the disposable income to conduct real research, but a lifetime of investigating. I think that's a better word. I don't have a laboratory. I don't have research assistants. I don't have access to, the archives at the Vatican. But oh my gosh, would I have loved to? My whole life has been about asking, to the best of my ability, the questions that I think are painfully obvious and desperately need to be asked in the face of what we get taught by preachers versus what the books say versus the internal contradictions and conflicts in the texts versus what spiritual practice leads us to understand. And if there's one thing I'm adamant about, is that Jesus wasn't a Christian, and he wasn't here to set up a Christian theocracy. He was a healer. He was a healer that was teaching people how to heal themselves and each other. I've talked about that before in the podcast, in specific episodes and in sidebars throughout. Please do feel free to dive into past episodes, as that is the most efficient way to support my content creation projects. Many projects. Okay, so malarkey, red flag. Whenever, I mean, it's sad and it's obvious, right? If you walk up and surveyed 2,000 American generic Christians of whatever variety, and there's so many. That's the other thing that people don't think about very much. There are so many bifurcated, self-contradicting, and in conflict with each other varieties of Christianity just inside the United States is mind-boggling. The most egregiously un-Christ-like of which are the gun worshippers. Pin on the corkboard. That deserves to be its own special episode. I've talked about it before. I'll talk about it again, I'm sure. But you do not understand the teachings of Christ if your church ceremonies involve machines of mass unaliving people. Full stop. And if Jesus were here right now, he'd be, I am dead certain, adamant about that. Adamant. If you're jerking off to a machine of death, and mind you, I got nothing against guns. Don't call me a gun hater. I believe in self-defense. I play violent video games. What are we doing next? Playing Call of Duty. So you can't gaslight me that way. But don't anybody dare tell me that Rambo Jesus is real. Rambo Jesus is an effing lie. And Jesus himself on the cross is proof of it. Because otherwise we wouldn't have crucifixes. We wouldn't have had crucifixes. We would have had swords. If Jesus was Rambo Jesus when Jesus was doing what Jesus did, instead of being crucified, he would have unalived all the Roman soldiers and probably toppled the Roman government and been a military invader. That's not what happened, is it? Rambo Jesus is a lie. And I will not stop saying that. In fact, one of the things I did right after doing this conversation was have ChatGPT make a little image of real Jesus facing off against Rambo Jesus. And it's glorious! Except the Jesus I want is in one of the versions, and the Rambo Jesus, the real Jesus I like the look of, is in one image, and the Rambo Jesus I prefer is in a different one. So I gotta go and bust out Photoshop and brush up on my Photoshop skills to stick them together. So it's not ready I'm not ready to share that image yet. What I'm actually probably gonna do is redraw them myself, because that's the way I'm trying to use AI. It's all part of the Mr. Zeppo teaches himself to sketch and draw and paint project, which has been offline for a long time. Okay, so that's what I gotta say about that paragraph. Let's move on. Next paragraph. Please read it for us. Anonymous robot voice.
Trump's messianic rhetoric. Trump himself has increasingly cast his role in quasi-religious terms. Observers note a MAGA-era theme that God anointed Trump to save the country, a narrative that surged after the 2022 assassination attempt. TheIndependent.com. Trump has even said he was saved by Christ as the chosen one. TheIndependent.com. A 2024 Carmen Wheel analysis quit. God made Trump. So Trump's platform now declares he made him for a divinely appointed mission, adding that some of his followers treat him like the son of God. Come on, Wheel magazine Lord. In short, Trump often echoes evangelical talking points that view his political comeback as part of a spiritual battle, echoing QAnon language of Storm Judgment Daily Independent.com.
Oh my gosh, I wasn't sure what it was going to say next, so this is kind of mind-blowing. There are so many things to unpack there. We could do a whole episode just on that paragraph. But first of all, special effects experts and like gun experts have said, that don't look right. That ain't right. And already, and this is hilarious. It's hilarious because it's such a turnaround. Excuse me, I've got the hiccups and the burps fighting it out in my throat right now. Okay. Almost immediately, people were like, that's sus. That is sus AF. That is what? How convenient. And how easy. That whole incident, right? The attempted unaliving of. I forget where it happened. And there's all kinds of things. And security experts have already pointed out, like, either that was a tremendously unacceptable failure of the security apparatus to protect, regardless of who it is, they're supposed to protect the person that represents the United States of America as the president, right? And as someone who I believe was some sort of like securities expert and or a general pointed out, they would never have let anybody get up on that roof. And people saw him. We've seen the video of people shouting and pointing. There were security officers in the building that he climbed up on top of. What were they doing? Why were they on break? But I digress. A makeup expert, someone who works in special effects, is like, that doesn't, I can't buy into this. And then, biology, and you don't really need to be an expert in this to understand, biology is clear. Cartilage does not magically grow back. So whatever happened, now I know, because it's hilarious to me. Conspiracy theories started coming out pretty quick, and MAGA, literally the party of conspiracy theory, was like, nope, blah, 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 blah. It is impossible. There could be no conspiracy theory about this. And that's hilarious to me. Like, absolutely fucking hilarious. They will accept, regurgitate, weaponize, and falsely accuse anybody of anything conspiratorial. I mean, that's what QAnon was all about. Trump keeps working that angle, even though QAnon apparently seems to have magically disappeared. Unless I'm wrong and I'm just no longer seeing QAnon content for whatever reason. That's also possible. Maybe QAnon is still active and I'm just no longer privy to it. Because one thing I know is true. Just because you don't see a thing doesn't mean a thing ain't there. But I digress. The fundamental flaw of God/Jesus did this thing is that it makes no sense given the rest of what's going on in the world. What's that one saying? Oh, there's a saying about. Hold on, let me look it up so I can quote it correctly. If God is all powerful, then there's a quote, and maybe that's enough. Yes. Favorite line from Batman, but who where does that actually, is it a Lex Luthor quote? It's the Epicurean paradox. There it is. I knew it was not just from Batman. They reference it in one of the Batman movies. But let's get the proper quote. This is an AI overview, but they're not that horribly off. The Epicurean paradox, also known as the problem of evil, is a philosophical argument questioning the existence of an all-powerful, all-knowing, and all-good God. And please, again, I am not an atheist. I'm just not able to blindly accept the cartoon cutout, two-dimensional, deeply flawed, obviously based on the human ego, religious indoctrination about these, substitutes for the actual divine thing. And we can talk about that in depth in a whole other episode, or a little bit later down the road in this episode. In light of the presence of evil and suffering in the world, it suggests that if God exists, then evil should not exist because God would be able and willing to prevent it. Here's the background of the argument. Where's the actual quote? Premise. If God is omnipotent, aka all-powerful, then God, and I'm gonna what's the word? Editorialize the way that AI has written it. Presuming that this is accurate. We can always go, there's a bunch of graphs, like here's the Epicurean, here's from Wikipedia, we can open that up if we want to avoid the AI version, but premise 1, if God is omnipotent, aka all-powerful, then God must be fully capable of preventing evil. Premise 2, if God is omnibenevolent, as in all good, then God would / must want to prevent evil. Premise 3, obviously, evil not only exists, but proliferates freely around the world. Look at how many conflicts are going on in the world right now? It's a bigger number than you think. It's over 100. Over 100 armed, violent, militarized conflicts going on right now, simultaneously. There's the two big ones we all know about, and then there's the second tier of slightly less popularly aware, slightly less popular civil wars and interstate wars. And then there's a whole long list of even more that people are like, I don't even know what's happening. So it exists, and it is being perpetuated, and it is flourishing everywhere, and causing the suffering of millions upon millions upon millions of innocent people. Not just in the conflict in Europe, not just with the big headliner conflict in the Middle East, but in every other place where there are groups opposing other groups through the use of, often, religious indoctrination and psychological manipulation. Conclusion. If God is both omnipotent, and here's the basic quote that I was trying to pull up. If God is both omnipotent and omnibenevolent, and evil exists, then, and this is critical, this is important that people actually think with their brain cells. If those two things are true, then either God is impotent or not really that good, or the God as described in those terms does not exist in that shape or form. I'm editorializing what it says there, right? The argument is traditionally attributed to the ancient Greek philosopher Epicurus, who used it to challenge, mind you, that's way before the invention of Christianity, I think, the traditional view of the gods. I'm fairly certain. Free will. Others argue that it is free will from moral development, that evil is the consequence of human choices. Sure. blah, 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 blah. Okay, there are ways to try and poke holes and or completely minimize this thing. But the irony is, the people who are doing that are also insisting that the omnipotence and the omnibenevolence and the omni-awareness are absolutely true. They get themselves in a catch-22 of either your argument against the Epicurean dilemma is correct, or your defense of this absolutist monolith of pure goodness is correct, but you can't keep holding on to both because they contradict and cancel each other out. The God of postmodern American evangelical Christianity is a comic book character. It's a flat, two-dimensional cardboard cutout. It's a deranged tyrant that wants you to love him, or else he will grind your bones into dust and shove hot pokers up your bumhole for eternity. That's one hell of an abusive relationship, period. If a man said to a woman, love me, or else I will lock you up in a basement and torture you forever, that man would get arrested, not praised and worshipped and idolized. So how do you jump the leapfrog of self-gaslight? How do people get from one to the other? Through gaslighting, through indoctrination, through psychological manipulation, in my humble opinion. All right, let's get back to this other thing. So that was the paragraph invoking. Interesting, in that paragraph, there is no reference to the family. Capital T, capital F, in quotes. Put a pin on the corkboard about that. We'll proceed with this because we are moving along. Okay, good. I still have the camera up. Here we go. Next paragraph from the assessment. I might have to break this up into multiple episodes.
Trump's messianic rhetoric. Trump himself has increasingly cast his role in quasi-religious terms. Observers note a MAGA-era theme that God anointed Trump to save the country, a narrative that surged after the 2022 assassination attempt. The Independent.com. Trump has even said he was saved by Christ as the chosen one. The Independent.com. A 2024 Carmen Wheel analysis quit. God made Trump. So Trump's platform now declares he made him for a divinely appointed mission, adding that some of his followers treat him like the Son of God. Come on, Wheel magazine or. In short, Trump often echoes evangelical talking points that view his political comeback as part of a spiritual battle, echoing QAnon language of Storm Judgment Day. The Independent.com.
Again, the use of the idea of an invisible, intangible, spiritual war predates the invention of Christianity, predates the writing of the Old and New Testament, and has classically always been used to justify the oppressive and tyrannical abuse of targeted, dehumanized, otherified groups of people through violence. How the fuck is that what an all-loving, all-caring, all-inclusive, all-accepting creator would want? How? It makes no sense. Okay, we already had listened to that paragraph. Let's start the next one.
Church-state separation issues. Such divinely framed rhetoric clashes with Western secular norms. The U.S. Constitution's Establishment Clause forbids government endorsement of religion, affirming that the government does not show preference to a certain religion and the church should not rule over the state. Time.com. In practice, Americans pride themselves on a broad religious freedom where the state neither compels belief nor disqualifies leaders for it. A president proclaiming a mission from God strains that separation principle. It suggests policy backed by religious authority rather than secular law. Critics warn this blurs the line between faith and government, undermining the wall of separation Jefferson envisioned Time.com.
Here's a fact. This is a verifiable historical fact. The founding fathers were not all evangelical Christians. In fact, that variety of Christianity, I don't think, existed. Not in the way we see it today. Maybe the labels did, but, Christianity obviously existed back then. But the founding fathers were a diverse collection of intellectual, spiritual men who wore makeup, powdered wigs, high heels, and stocking tights, aka drag in postmodern terminology, but pin on the corkboard. That's one of my favorite memes ever. Blah, 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 like the founding fathers. The founding fathers. Fops. Absolute fops. With their powdered wig and their little moles painted on in the... Okay, obviously that's an exaggeration. But it was common. That was the trend. That was the fashion. Stocking tights, thick-ass heels, powdered wigs, because, the mange and other horrible diseases. But what they weren't, what the founding fathers were not, and they wrote about it and they spelled it out and they made their arguments, they were not ethno-nationalist theocrats. In fact, I forget which one. It's probably Jefferson. I don't have the meme right in front of me. But one of them, I don't have the quote. There's a meme with the quote on it that I recently came across. But one of them very clearly pointed out the point, and this is me paraphrasing, but you can go look it up and find this quote for yourself. The point of the separation of church and state is to avoid the repeating of what they'd seen in Europe, which he points out had been the cause of much suffering and bloodshed for centuries. Hello? The Dark Age. That's another one of my favorite memes of all time. We've already lived through a period where all governments were controlled by organized religion. It's called the Dark Ages. And it was god-awful. And no evangelical Christian would survive 5 seconds if they were magically teleported back to that period. They'd think they would love it because they'd think they'd be righteous and in power and in control, but it was miserable. And their current belief system would have been seen as heresy by the theocrats of that time. We already did the church and state, right? There is a reason why there is a separation of church and state in this country. And as much as I believe myself to be someone striving to maintain my spiritual connection to divinity and my communion with that entity we call the Christ, I'm also someone who adamantly objects to the breaking down of that separation of church and state. And again, to reiterate, this has been said very eloquently by many other people, but religious freedom is the freedom for anyone of any persuasion to practice any religion in their own home and in their temples without prosecution or persecution from the government. It is not the freedom for any particular ideologue to impose their religion on everyone else. That is a bastardization of what religious freedom means. Full stop. Anybody arguing the opposite direction is trying to gaslight themselves and each other and the people around them. Religious freedom means you can go to a synagogue, you can go to a temple, you can go to a mosque, you can go hang out in the woods, which is the true effing temple. Nature, that is, well, actually, you can sit down and meditate in any space because the real temple is right here. And there's a whole explanation for it. I almost reposted that meme. It's one of my oldest controversial memes. But the temple to the divine entity is the center of your effing mind. Jesus spoke to it. The Buddha spoke to it. I cannot make claims about other prophets because I'm not as well versed in them. But I know for a fact that Jesus and Buddha said stuff like that, and I like the synergies there. If anything, if I had to pick a label, I'm an onist. I don't know how to pronounce that. Onism or onism? Somebody help me with the pronunciation. But the idea that no single organized religion has the absolute truth, but that universal spiritual truths are sprinkled throughout all the faith systems. Because no matter what they've turned into, most spiritual traditions started because someone had an aha moment in their own journey in struggling with the question of what the bloody fuck is going on here? And it usually happened because they stopped what they were doing and looked within. But we'll have to come back and talk about that. That's a huge theme at the Almost Daily Zencast. If you only know me from Good Morning Trumptopia, you're missing out. You need to go listen to the Almost Daily Nugget of Zen and the Almost Daily Zencast. And the, what's my other one? What's my book club? The book club. That's the central pillar. And one of the least listened to special segments of the podcast. Is it totally unauthorized? What is it called? Unauthorized and explicit readings. If you have not listened to a single episode of my subseries, Unauthorized and Explicit Readings, please, oh please, go do that. Treat it like a book club. Go support the authors involved and buy yourself or borrow yourself from the library one of them books and then read along. Please and thank you. You might be pleasantly surprised. It all starts to interconnect, my friends. Okay, next thingamabob. Let's go.
Evangelical prosperity gospel and megachurch hypocrisy. A notable contradiction in American evangelicalism is that many of its most prominent leaders preach wealth and growth while living lavishly. For example, televangelist Joel Osteen pictured above leads a Houston megachurch and has an estimated net worth above $50 million Vox.com. Others like T.D. Jakes, Rick Warren, and Kenneth Copeland likewise run giant churches and profit from best-selling books and TV ministries. Observers point out that these pastors' hefty fortunes and luxury lifestyles, private jets, mansions, etc., have led critics to accuse them of using religion to fund lavish lifestyles or even fleecing the flock. SCMP.com. This prosperity gospel, which tells congregants that faith equals material blessing, sharply contradicts Jesus' teachings about giving to the poor and taking up one's cross. As one commentator notes, while Jesus said we'd have troubles in this world, prosperity preachers promise only wealth. Gospel Coalition Org. Critics argue this theology replaces true humility and charity with a focus on personal gain. Vox.com. Gospel Coalition Org. In summary, the rise of mega churches and ultra-wealthy pastors, for example, Lakewood Church, Saddleback, the Potter's House, exemplifies a purified version of Christianity oriented around success, a trend many theologians decry as hypocritical given biblical calls for modesty and generosity.
Real quick, what did Jesus tell the rich man? What did he tell the rich man? Please read it for us, desktop voice.
And
No. Come here. Read this bit, buddy. Read it.
And
Oh, why is it only highlighting and? Get over here. Read this bit.
go and sell all your possessions and give the money to the poor, and you will have treasure in heaven. Then come, follow me.
That's cut and dry, folks. Cut and dry. Prosperity wealth doctrine is heretical. It is a lie. It is a willful, twisting and turning and bastardization and reinterpretation and blatant complete obfuscation of the direct teachings of Jesus. Period. And again, anybody arguing otherwise is probably trying to sell you something, is probably trying to make money off of you, and is totally gaslighting you. And I will stand on that hill with confidence. If Jesus were right here, right now, I'd be like, yo, brother Jesus. He'd be like, yeah, bro. We're supposed to be providing for others, not hoarding wealth. We're supposed to be lifting each other up, not hoarding power. We're supposed to be working in service to one another, not oppressing people based on made-up ideologies. Don't take my word for it. Go meditate. Go pray. Go ask Jesus. Don't ask the preacher that drives a Lambo. Don't ask the influencer. Don't ask the megachurch billionaire. Ask Jesus. He will show up and clarify these things in the heart of hearts if you do it earnestly. Now, if you're busy gaslighting yourself, you ain't going to hear from him. It don't work that way. You can't be shoveling lies down your own gullet and then hear the truth. You got to purge that BS. You got to set down the indoctrination. You got to let go of the ideological constructs you've allowed yourself to cling to. Then you can receive like inspiration that is genuine and true. And it's really simple. It's really simple. Go be poor. Go be homeless. What's the other thing that Jesus says to his disciples when they're like, what do you mean? What are you talking about? When you do things to the least of your brethren, you are doing them to me. Christ himself says the kingdom of heaven is within us. We will be able to do what Christ does. And I don't think it's cheesy, fun magic tricks like the loaves and the fish and the wine. It's the healing. Been on the corkboard. Again, I've said this multiple times. It's amazing how people just fly right past it. The spiritual calling of the entire human species is to heal ourselves, heal each other, and therefore heal the human species. And it's the fact that we keep neglecting that. We keep kicking the can down the road. We keep gaslighting ourselves. We keep indoctrinating ourselves with greed that we've not achieved it. That's why we've not achieved it. That's why we keep seeing all these problems. And we will always keep making new problems if we keep using the same garbage tools like greed and avarice. Pin on the corkboard. Okay, so it goes on to some more megachurch stuff. We're going to skip ahead because this is getting long. Well, actually, no, I don't want. There's so much more content here because I asked it many questions. And because it proposed a little path, this is the bullet point, and then we've got the article, and then we've got the full white paper report. And I don't know how different or how the same it's all going to sound. But we're going to listen to the rest of this bullet point list. Here we go.
Growth of megachurches. Accompanying this prosperity trend is the proliferation of megachurches. The U.S. now has roughly 1,800 churches with 2,000 plus members NPR, bucking the decline in average church attendance. These non-denominational megachurches often operate like corporate entities, multi-million-dollar budgets, media branding, and draw younger, more diverse crowds NPR, while they fill congregations. Critics say the style, emphasis on entertainment and fundraising, moves away from traditional Bible teachings.
Hypocrisy.
The normalization of such megachurch models, enshrining celebrity pastors and prosperity messages, highlights the gap between evangelical practice and its historic doctrines of humility, community, and care for the poor.
Jesus wants us out here taking care of one another. Like literally washing the feet of the lepers. That's what he did. literally. Ew, that's gross. Ew, that's so woke. Pin on the corkboard. We got to come back and do a whole what the F is wrong with you people calling Jesus woke. He hasn't gone woke. No one changed the meaning. Your pastors and your ideologues and your politicians, except for the ones who don't, because again, no group is a monolith. I know that. But the ones guilty of this have led y'all astray. They have twisted and turned and bastardized the words of Christ into take, hoard, hoard. Pile up that money. Praise the Lord, you're so rich. Heretical malarkey. And if Jesus were here, he'd be like, bruh, sell your stuff off. Liquidate it, turn it into usable money that you can then feed the poor and hungry, heal the sick, house the homeless. Oh, I'm sorry, unhoused is the new preferred term. I'm trying to be respectful, but vocabulary gets lodged in. It takes a little bit of effort to update that stuff, especially, when it's been there for 40 years or more. But that's the point, not to get sidetracked into vocabulary issues. Hoarding wealth is immoral when the consequences of hoarding wealth directly create poverty, hunger, suffering, pain, and ultimately death. People die on the streets every day. Right now, as we're having this debate, someone is out there slowly fading away because our society defends the rights of capital to hoard wealth of capitalists. And mind you, there's a lot of people out there calling themselves capitalists who are not capitalists because they don't own any effing capital. If you don't own capital and means of production, you're not a capitalist. You're a drone worker bee in a toxic relationship with capitalists. We can come back and talk about that at length. Okay, here we go. Moving on to the next paragraph.
Christian ethno-nationalism. In recent years, a strand of far-right ideology has fused religious and racial identity. In the U.S.,
heretical.
This is often called Christian nationalism. Polling by PRRI and others finds a persistent minority endorsing a view of America as fundamentally a Christian nation.
A lie.
For example, 13% of Americans say the federal government should declare an official Christian religion parasite.
Heresy.
And about 20% more would have it actively promote Christian values.
You're supposed to live them, not impose them.
Nationalists, a majority 53% support, making Christianity the state religion parasite. Project 2025, a hard right policy blueprint for a possible future Trump administration, even declares that freedom is defined by God, not man. Politico.com. Commentators note that Trump's MAGA base has been energized by a white Christian nationalist narrative. One analysis emphasizes a defensive, mostly white Christian minority that views America as a divinely ordained promised land for their own group. Time.com. This ideology often accompanies overtly exclusionary, racist beliefs, cloaking nativism, anti-immigrant or anti-minority sentiment in religious language. Globally, echoes exist, for example, European nationalist parties invoking Christianity against Muslim immigration, or Christ the Redeemer imagery in Brazil's politics, but the US case is notable for its scale.
It's mind-blowing. What did Jesus say about migrants? Treat the foreigners as one of your own, for you were once foreigners yourselves. And that's the rich and deeply disappointing hypocrisy of all the mass migration supporters out there. Where's your grandfather from? Oh, well, they came here illegally. Oh, you mean they came here because we had no border? We had no visa system. We had no green card system. We had no, there was open borders for most of American history. Literally. The right way to show up in America was just to show up. very slowly over time, we created the immigration limitations and, the quote, immigration system that we have that impose limitations and quotas and blah, blah, blah. And ever since we created that system, it's been a tug of war of how do we use that system in really, really, really bigoted ways. Evidence. Italians used to not be white enough. The Scottish were once the dirty scum of the earth that were unacceptable and were not white enough. Let that sink in. That's a historical, verifiable fact. Let that sink in. Apply some of them critical thinking skills. Okay? But moving up the thing, again, it's interesting they haven't brought up the family. Maybe we'll have another episode about that. Let's go. Let's ask it. I'm not going to look. But, I just typoed that, but oh well. It's going to probably correct the typo for itself. All right, moving on. Project 2025, a whole cluster of gaslighting around that. It wasn't real. No one was writing it. Trump had nothing to do with it. He doesn't know who they are. It was written by the Heritage Foundation and others, but the Heritage Foundation was kind of right there at the center. And the Heritage Foundation is deeply tied to the family, and they have their priorities, and the debunking of all the exaggerated denialist claims about how Trump has got nothing to do with it is proven by the fact that he gave a speech thanking them at their own headquarters, I believe, for writing Project 25 and promising them to execute it faithfully, which is what the oath of office says about American law and the Constitution. Not a little side project by white ethno-nationalist theocrats, or theocratical, or however you conjugate that the right way. So there's tons of issues. We can do a whole other episode about that. We're going to move on, though, because I've been dragging on for quite a bit. We're almost at the bottom of this thing, and then we're going to stop there, because we've got too much going on. Let's listen to this next paragraph.
Project 2025 and policy. Elements of Christian nationalist goals have even been codified in policy plans. Politico reports that Trump advisors want Christian nationalism as a stated priority for a second term, and that some campaign documents envision remaking government according to religious principles. Politico.com. Such plans, including curbing reproductive rights or LGBTQ protections, use religious justification to limit freedoms. These moves alarm defenders of secular democracy, who see them as attempts to undermine pluralism by giving one faith-based identity political primacy. Time.com.
I would have used the word supremacy. It is a kind of religious supremacy, which is quite obviously the exact opposite of religious freedom. I've already explained that. Do we need to explain it again? Maybe, because a lot of people seem to be hard of hearing and hard of comprehension. Religious freedom is the freedom for anyone to practice any religion or no religion at all. It is not the elitist right or privilege of one religion to impose its ideology on all others. That is malarkey. That is heretical to the notion. All right? Okay. We've only got 2 more paragraphs to go.
Historical use of religious rhetoric. Leaders across history have long framed politics as God's will. For instance, in medieval Europe, the divine right of kings doctrine held that monarch's authority came directly from God and was beyond earthly challenge. Britannica.com. In 1095, Pope Urban II incited the First Crusade by exhorting Christians with Deus Vult, God wills it, Pledging spiritual reward for killing enemies of the faith history.com. Colonial powers justified empire building as a Christianizing mission, and modern authoritarian regimes, from imperial Russia to theocracies today, similarly invoke religion to legitimize rule. These examples show how religious language can be a powerful propaganda tool. By claiming divine sanction, rulers rally followers and suppress dissent. Trump's mission from God meme echoes these patterns, using sacred symbolism and apocalyptic promise to mobilize a political base, much as past leaders have done to unify or control populations.
All of it heretical. If you're going to be honest about what Jesus taught. Jesus said, "Give unto Caesar what is Caesar's." And there's a lot of debate about what that's supposed to mean, but it's pretty straightforward. He had no beef with government. He had beef with the abuse of power. He had no desire to start a religion. He had a calling to point out the abuses of power in the organized religion of his day, which is a form of Judaism arguably much different than what we see now, which is, of course, a point of debate that, I mean, I agree with that assessment, but plenty of people will argue otherwise, and I'm not an expert. But look into it for yourself. But the larger point remains really valid, right? Give unto Caesar that which belongs to Caesar, and then render unto God that which belongs to God. He was not here to create a theocratic nation where all people are forced to be indoctrinated into an ideological construct that uses his name for ridiculous reasons and to achieve absurdly un-Christ-like goals. And if he were here today, I keep saying that because I'm really, really confident, that if Jesus were right here and I were to point the microphone in his face and like, "Hey, what's up, buddy? What do you think about this?" The first thing he would utter, the first words out of his mouth, if the second coming were to happen right now and in my little home podcast studio, would be, I think, in my humble opinion, based on a lifetime of seeking Christ myself, right? He'd be like, "What the hell are you doing in my name, you hypocrites?" Like he said to the Pharisees. What did he call them? I forget where this is, and it's something I've always wanted to find again, and I just haven't put the effort into. But he calls them empty, corrupt tombs. Shiny and polished on the outside, but decrepit on the inside. Okay, awkwardly, he comes, for whatever reason, we come full circle to talk about the symbolism of this Pepe Frog character again, so let's hear what he's got to say about that.
Pete the Frog symbolism. The frog-like figure in the meme is Pete the Frog, a cartoon character from Matt Fury's Boys Club comics. As noted, its sudden appearance flags an alt-right association. In the mid-2010s, Pete was widely adopted in internet memes, and some online extremist groups used Pete in racist or anti-Semitic imagery. LatinTimes.com. Because of this, watchdogs like the ADL classify Pete as a hate symbol when used in certain contexts. LatinTimes.com. Importantly, many uses of Pete are still innocent, but its political use is what triggered the label. In Trump's meme, the discrete Pete image functions as an alt-right Easter egg, signaling to extremist viewers. In sum, the frog is not a benign cartoon here but a pointer to a subculture that mixes internet humor, white nationalism, and conspiracy. Precisely the kind of group that also propagates messages of divine destiny for Trump. LatinTimes.com. LatinTimes.com.
Alright, so here's the final blurb. Oops, I didn't mean to do that. Here's this final blurb that reads off, the sources. Please, by all means, okay. Anybody out there, knee-jerk response being, all those sources are fake news. I'm like, okay, go look at them. Go read them and evaluate them. Go read them and apply critical thinking skills. Go read them, find out what their sources were, and dig them up, and think through that. Because it's intellectually lazy, in my humble opinion, to say, blah, 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 that's not valid, if you have not done the work. Okay? It's that simple. Let's just listen to what the sources were. Boom.
Sources. Analyses from major media. For example, The Independent, Politico, Latino Times, Time, BBC and research organizations, PRRI, are cited above, along with historical references. For example, History.com, Encyclopedia Britannica, and Reporting on American Evangelical Movements.
Okay, so let's round the corner into summarizing all this in terms of like my own thinking. Let me try to stick the landing here. My lifetime of seeking spiritual communion with divinity has led me to certain conclusions that are probably going to be immediately rejected as controversial or insane or incorrect by the folks who are caught up in believing this. That Trump is on a mission from God. That Trump is anointed and special. He's selling cheap gold laminated sneakers made in China. He's selling a Trump Bible, sacrilegious, where he puts his autograph on the cover. That is sacrilegious. If Obama had done that, every single person buying the Trump Bible would have been foaming at the mouth and raging against the Obama Bible. He is blatantly appointing really unstable sounding, what's that? I don't know her. I can't think of her name off the top of my head. But he's appointed a lady and created a completely fake, and I don't think congressionally approved, because the president does not have absolute power to just reorganize the government at his will. That's unconstitutional. As I was talking about in a previous episode, the three branches of government are co-equal. Neither one of them is more important or more powerful than the rest. So this entire idea that they argue that judicial oversight is tyranny is laughable. The entire argument that they have is Trump has supreme power because, in the face of what the Constitution says, in denial of, in rejection of what the Constitution said. And pin on the corkboard. I've addressed this before and I'll address it again. I'm not a statist. I'm not a bootlicker. Before Trump came to power, I was out there questioning why both parties kind of come off like a Punch and Judy puppet show when they fight and argue and yet help each other finish off their goals. They do. There are some things they legitimately oppose each other about, and most of the rest, though, they kind of go wink, wink, nudge, nudge, you're evil, no, you're evil, let's get it done. And this situation now, Trump 2.0, Trumptopia 2.0, is egregious and outrageous and should be something we all organize around and transcend our prior political affiliations, because he's gone beyond the pale. Whether he's doing it entirely on his own or he's doing it at the behest of the oligarchs and bazillionaires that one could argue essentially feel like they probably own him now because of the ungodly amounts of money they poured into his campaign, which is a whole separate issue. Pin on the corkboard. Get money out of politics. I've said this before in social media and on a podcast episode or two here and there as a sidebar, never as like a titled theme. But the bazillions upon bazillions upon bazillions of dollars that exchanges hands in the multiple industries that now exist around politics, all of that should go towards feeding the hungry, housing the unhoused, healing the sick, empowering the downtrodden, lifting up those in debt, and generally creating a society where everyone, because we're all human beings, and F all ideological constructs that argue the opposite, we are all children of the divine thing. And here's my proof of that real quick. Because I don't buy, and I refuse to buy into any ideological construct that argues we're special and those people there aren't even human. Because that's patently false. That's us versus them. That's the basic, most base form of us versus them ideological manipulation. We are special for whatever reason, divine or not. We are special. And those people over there are unworthy of anything because they're essentially not people. I'm sorry, but every single member of the human species is genetically 99.1009% genetically identical. Now, there's a lot of people out there, twisting themselves into pretzels to deny the scientific evidence for the genome. Now, I'm not going to blindly defend science, just like I'm not ever going to blindly defend politics or politicians. But to the best of my understanding, the verifiable aspects, in other words, if you had the same equipment as the people who wrote the paper, you'd be able to verify it, right? Now, obviously, the problem is most of the people who deny science also have no education in science, no understanding of the fundamental principles, and don't have the equipment to do the work. They're just eating other people's content and regurgitating the denialism. I digress. The verifiable, to the best of my understanding, and if I am for some reason totally wrong, I will admit it when someone shows me the evidence. But to the best of my understanding, based on the evidence I have seen, that I think is reasonable, and that I see multiple different sources verifying, is that the genome is real. Our genetics are real. We are all one big family. All of life, from the tiniest of weirdest of things, from that, what's that little goofy microscopic teddy bear worm, the tardigrade, to the biggest thing on the planet, the blue whale. And us in between, we are all one family. We are all one genomic recombination of all the different bits and pieces that life has come up with, right? There is one thing called all caps life. And it is inventing and exploring and living in, embodying many forms of the vessels infused with the consciousness or the awareness or the aliveness that is divinity, right? Now, there's a bunch of different people with slightly different takes on that, and they're all arguing with each other, and it's adorable. But I'm fairly certain that anybody who sets aside their bigotry, sets aside their ideological constructs that they've been indoctrinated into clinging to, sets aside their politics, sets aside their religion, and deeply investigates for themselves what they are internally, and then deeply and honestly investigates what the rest of life is, will come to the same conclusion. We are all one form. We are all one function in expressing itself in many forms. Sorry, I started off backwards there. We are all one function. The living cosmos. The living universe. And I'm fairly convinced, and it'd be really hard for anybody to prove it to me otherwise because there's very little evidence to the contrary. The universe is alive. That's why we are alive, right? That whole argument about everything from nothing is nonsensical. And it's the one place where science still hasn't caught up. Science is slowly catching up. Science, despite all the problematic issues, and there is corruption, there is greed, there is politics, there is ideological stubbornness, and there's just plain old-fashioned human ego folly. Because we're people, we are human. But there is also the empirical about science. And that we need to keep checking and testing and questioning and re-verifying. Just like we need to approach religion the same way. Instead of blindly following indoctrination, we should be actively investigating, questioning, seeking, experimenting, experiencing the phenomena that are, quote, spiritual. And one of the things I've noticed during the course of all the time that I've been here, observing and questioning and trying my best to apply critical thinking skills, and that's that science is catching up to ancient mysticism, right? There's been a rash of new memes about how science is finally accepting that focused sound waves can be used to treat medical conditions. Frequency. Duh. I mean, that's why we have all the fear-mongering about the negative ways in which frequency can be used, because, yeah, that's possible. And so, we're going to fear-monger about it with ourselves because that's what conspiracy theory content is all about. I've yet to encounter any conspiracy theory content that isn't deeply and problematically anchored in fear and manipulation, except for the rare exceptions. Again, nothing is a monolith of absolute one thing or the other. I have a favorite conspiracy theory, which the average self-proclaimed conspiracy theorist will respond to like, no, it's not possible. And I love bringing it up. But all evidence, in my humble opinion, based on a lifetime of questioning and observation, points to the possibility that most conspiracy theory content, especially the kind that is obviously constantly recycled and repackaged, and the goalposts keep moving, and the claims keep getting weirder and weirder, that's all engineered, published, and distributed by the people we would call the conspirators, because it benefits them the most. 150 years worth of conspiracy theory content, and none of the problems pointed out in that content have been fixed. None of the people supposedly exposed have been held to account. So very much like Trump, conspiracy theory content is, in the majority, kind of impotent. It seems more like a way to entrap people in a mental, ideological echo chamber of endless argumentation based on specialized wedges of treadmills. The last word I was supposed to say treadmills, not repeat wedges. You know what I'm saying? Like, the vast majority of conspiracy theory content seduces the believers into locking themselves in an echo chamber that sits diametrically opposed to another echo chamber. So you're sitting there running on a treadmill of arguing, and so is the person you're arguing with. So is the person you are arguing with. Especially if you're arguing about two things that really can't be proven and are both conspiracy. But I digress. This meme is deeply problematic. The fact that so many people who claim to follow Jesus, but also are now increasingly normalizing the rejection of Jesus on the ground that he is too that he is, quote, too woke, should alarm anybody and everyone of whatever faith or no faith at all. And it does. The only people not alarmed are the ones that claim to believe in Jesus. And I'm sorry, folks, you can't. I think the Pope said something recently along these lines. And although I'm not a huge blind faith fan of the Catholic Church, because I'm well aware of their problematic issues and red flags, pin on the corkboard. Already discussed it in some past episodes, and we're going to have to come back and discuss it again, I'm sure. And that's a tough one. Because in my own family, I have people who, quite curiously and ironically, and I see this everywhere in a bunch of different issues, I have people in my own family, and I'm not trying to be rude, and I'm not trying to poop on them, but I have members of my own extended family that are outraged and adamantly opposed to what Trump is doing, and simultaneously blind faith defenders of the Catholic Church who will turn a blind eye to all the problems, including the really nasty ones, and will get mad at me for pointing out the fact that those things are real and those problems are egregious and something needs to be done about it. Just like there are people who are quite it just boggles the mind when someone is adamantly anti-Trump and then starts behaving like a Trumtopian, blindly defending something else. And I'm seeing that with Netanyahu a lot. Americans who are mad and outraged and clutching their pearls and trash-talking Trump and the Trumtopian movement. But if you bring up Netanyahu and that whole situation, suddenly they sound exactly like MAGA. They sound exactly like a Trump supporter, except in favor of what Netanyahu's doing. Madness. But that's an issue for another day. Friends, we can go on. There's a bunch of more stuff here because we had some more discussions, and the ChatGPT, for whatever reason I've gendered as masculine, probably because of the voice that I use. We should switch it up. We went through a whole thing. I didn't read what he wrote. It wrote. I should not. Well, then again, I should. By the way, one of the reasons I'm doing this. Thank you, ChatGPT. Oh, let me get down to the bottom. I like to be polite. Let's see what it says. Let's let it speak in this pseudo-robot voice.
You're very welcome. I'm glad to support thoughtful, well-informed advocacy. If you need anything else, additional visuals, video narration scripts, citations, or help preparing public-facing materials, I'm here for you. Stay strong and keep up the important work.
Why, thank you. That's one of the areas where it sort of didn't quite do as well as I hoped it would, unless this is supposed to be slidable. But it's a little wonky on its image making. Like, this thing cuts off. And I don't know if this is original or if it pulled this from somewhere. It does seem to be on point. Look, he even included the thing, but this image got cut off. Anyway, so it's not this particular form of ChatGPT, but there's other ones. Okay, I will show you. No, I'm not. I did ask that. No, yeah, I might as well. Where is it? What happened to the imagey thing? Oh, here we go. Is it here? Okay, so this is one of various instances of me trying to make an image. And one of the things I discovered is that there's a version of ChatGPT that asks you questions to help you craft, or to help itself craft for you, the best possible prompt to feed into an AI so that it can make an image. Which is like, that's wild. That's wild to me. And it had a whole process. I don't know if that page is still there. It's going to be over here. This is the result. This is one of two resulting prompts, and this is one of the images it made. It's really close to perfect, except for the extra unnecessary weapon. That's one of my more favorite Rambo Jesuses. Like, this is Aryan Rambo Jesus right here. And this is supposed to be actual dark-skinned, Palestinian-born, real Jesus. Because I don't care what anybody tries to say. In another instance, it's like, I can't help you with that. Probably because it didn't like the fact that I was dealing with MAGA as a thing. But here we go. Here's the prompts. We had a whole conversation. I was like, I want to write this thing. I want to make an image that looks like this. And it's like, great concept. I don't have a problem with it, this turnaround. So then it was like, here's some questions. Let me do this. This one I did actually read in real time because I was like working with it. Yeah. So we walked through this series of questions where it gave me options like, which one do you want? Do you want it photorealistic? Do you want it like a old religious paint? And then we came up with these two prompts, and then somewhere else it presented. Is it this one? No, that's the video. It wanted to give me a video. Oh, here we go. It's in Sora. Sora, which is it opens a whole nother page for some reason. And this reminds me of Dream by Wombo Art, because it's actually got a community gallery where you can sit and upvote and downvote and whatever. Where's my history? This is where it like, not my plan. I'm on free plan. I cannot afford all these things. Where's my recent images? This is where I came up with, ew, that's a creepy Nightmare Terror guy. That's an adorable purple cat. That's a sad clown that's crying. But where's my stuff? Where's the ones I already made? My media. Duh, right there. Here we go. These are a bunch of slightly different but similar iterations of when it didn't have a problem. Although in one of them, it's like, this content might violate our thingamahoo. Can it show it to me anyways? Prompt: comically muscular, very pale-skinned, blonde-haired, blue-eyed, MAGA hat-wearing Rambo Jesus strapped with ammo and a machine gun. At first I was like, let me make one and then the other, and then I'll... But instead I did... For whatever reason, twice it was like, I can't do that. But then the other times it was like, oh yeah, totally, dude. And here they are. There's several of them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 of them. Of the 8... only one of the authentic-looking Jesus, or would it be Jesus's? I don't know. Only one of the Jesus characters, plural, looks like what I wanted him to look like. The other ones, like this guy, still looks pretty Anglo-European. Look at me, I'm a white guy. Not blonde-haired and blue-eyed, but, Greek. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Mediterranean, but still not brown. Anyways, this is my favorite Jesus of the ones that it rendered. This is my favorite halo of the Jesuses that it rendered. That's my favorite hand. This is the actual sign for peace. That's why if you look at all the ancient ye olde paintings of Jesus, he's doing this and pointing to his giant bleeding heart. That's where we get the term bleeding heart liberal. What? Conservative, crazy, Rambo Jesus is a lie. Anyways, I'm going to take a couple of these. I don't know which one of the Rambo Jesuses is my favorite. I don't like the way he's holding the weapon here. I don't like how this one, although I love the halo and I like that hand, he disappeared into the cloud. Although if I had to pick just one, I guess it would have to be this one. No, I'd have to give up the halo and pick this one because it's the brownest one. And I don't care what you say. Jesus was brown AF, if not almost darn near black. Because he was a Palestinian-born Israelite living in one of the hottest parts of the world. Sorry, not sorry. Right? The fact that he was whitewashed throughout history is because Christianity became part of the colonial power structure. We had a little sentence somewhere in the conversation earlier about how the colonial movement used the Christianification of the world as its excuse to go and what? Invade and colonize everybody. In direct opposition to what Jesus taught. Jesus never said go over there and take over. At all. In any way, shape, or form. Yes, he talked about sharing the truth. But what truth? Notice that when he says that, there's no summary statement of what the truth is. If there ever was, it's been lost to history. According to some controversial theories, and I'll end on this, and this will be a whole can of worms for people, but according to some historians and serious researchers, Jesus was an entheogenic mystic that practiced things like yoga, although it probably wasn't called yoga at the time, but meditation practices in conjunction with ritualistic consumption of mind-altering substances. Whoa! Jesus was a hippie. There's even some evidence to argue, although people deny it and come up with denialist arguments saying, no, that really means this. But there is an argument, both in some of the language found throughout the Bible and in the early iconography of devout members of the church who were artists and depicting images of Christ and his practices, that hemp and or cannabis were involved. The cannabusum, spelt with a K, not a C, there's a big debate, and there's deniers denying and spreading all kinds of reasons for why that's not. But academic researchers suggest that entheogenic practices, meditative practices in conjunction with mind-altering natural substances, might very well have been what he was actually teaching. And guess what we're learning now? Guess what we're discovering in psychotherapy? Magic mushrooms and other quote-unquote dangerous plants are actually very therapeutic when applied under controlled settings with the thoughtful framework and intention to heal. And I've said this for a long time because I'm convinced through personal direct investigation, cannabis heals. Is it a miracle wonder drug that's going to magically cure you of everything from all cancers to HIV and everything else on the list on that meme about ivermectin? No, because nothing is. Once you start adding too many things to the list and claiming it's a panacea for all of them, that's a red flag for profiteering. Full circle to that whole point. Big Pharma bad, but Merck and its panacea that cures everything good, even though both are Big Pharma. I agree with the assessment that Yeshua and other people we now call prophets probably practiced meditative techniques coupled with the use of entheogenic plant material. Once you start investigating things like current existing traditions that do exactly that, coupled with the fact that the pharmaceutical industry is tearing it up, not in a good way, I'm not defending Big Pharma, but they are in a panic and out there to try and patent and formulate synthetic versions of CBD and THC and psilocybin. And the fact that actual therapists are using cannabis and psilocybin with really good outcomes, treating people with PTSD and other mental afflictions, you come back full circle and go, oh, that starts to make a lot of sense. And in a hyper-conservative, totalitarian environment where the powers that be do not want. And this is something that postmodern conspiracy theorists will say now, but then also turn around and deny all the other parts of it. But, you know, when a government or a religious institution focuses entirely on hoarding power, exercising control, and hoarding wealth, they don't want you healing yourself. They don't want you liberating your mind. That's antithetical to their ability to cling to power and continue hoarding wealth. Ironically, this has led to a lot of hypocrisy, even within MAGA. Remember? I'll try to wrap things up here. But remember how much they foamed at the mouth in outrage this is not a blind defense of Hunter Biden, but in all fairness, Hunter Biden was someone struggling with addiction to bad chemicals, right? Because there's two different categories of things. There are the healthy, healing, natural, entheogenic compounds found in organically existing natural plants. And if all life is divine, then there must be a purpose. There's a reason why Aboriginal people say for every illness there's a plant. And we're coming full circle on that, right? Big Pharma's like, well, we better get on that bandwagon. In fact, most of the legitimate pharmaceutical products that actually work, guess where they were discovered? In nature, often as part of plant material. Like the simplest example is aspirin. Duh, don't take my word for it, go look it up. But we would not have aspirin today if scientists hadn't said, this is interesting, look at what this plant does. Let's experiment with it and see what benefits it brings to the human body. Based on traditional uses of that plant by Aboriginal people. Right? They discovered that some plants harbor a kind of spore or fungus that when you cultivate it, you can extract from it aspirin. If I got any of those details wrong, I'm sorry. It's been a hot minute for me. It's not like I looked this up. Again, honestly, I've shared this with you in an effort to prompt thoughtful, civilized, political and social and spiritual public discourse. Why? Because we are all interconnected. We are all in this storm together. Some of us are surviving the storm in yachts. Some of us are surviving this storm in humble fishing boats. Some of us are surviving this storm in little wobbly dinghies. And some of us are flopping around in the water drowning. But we're all in this storm together. And if we want to fix not only are we in this storm together, we created the conditions that make the storm so dangerous. We spent centuries now spewing toxic waste into the water we drink, the land we cultivate, and the air we breathe. We've spent centuries indoctrinating ourselves into believing that money and power and hoarding those things is more important than healing and providing and protecting. And if we don't correct, if we don't adjust, if we don't have our eureka moment and go, oh shit, we can do better than this, our chances of collective survival, despite all the sci-fi utopian craziness coming out of the tech bros, been on the corkboard. I have to do a totally irrelevant media review episode on Mountainhead. I already posted a little one-liner. Mountainhead presents a global dilemma that seems almost prophetic. Like the context in which the characters find themselves in and what they're always worried about and discussing and reacting to. Not their behavior, but not what they end up doing, but the context, which they're responsible for. They helped create it. That seems almost prophetic. Why? Not because whoever wrote it is a prophet, but because we're already halfway there and they're commenting on it. And that arguably is the likely cause of a lot of prophecy that does come true. They're not really being prophets. They're just going, oh, this is what I see, and these are the logical conclusions that I'm worried about as things continue to unfold. So put a pin on the corkboard there for me. We're going to have to come back and do that in the not too distant future. But if we do not stop beating our faces, each other's faces, into the brick wall of pointless ideological conflict, then the probability of species-wide, not just survival, but thriving as a species are dangerously low. And no one's coming to save us. If there are other life forms out there watching, according to the people who know, and I don't know how much I buy into this or not, but it makes sense that this would be the case. It's very plausible. I'm not saying I blindly believe it. I'm just saying I wouldn't be surprised if it were true. But if there are sophisticated, spacefaring species out there, then it makes way too much sense that they check us out and be like, nope, these kids are not ready. We're just going to keep them in a little protective bubble, let them fight it out until they figure it out, and then we will welcome them into the galactic community. Because if they, jump ship now, they're just going to be a hassle, and they're just going to destroy themselves in an attempt at destroying us out of fear. I think that's very likely. If there is a galactic federation of light out there, they're probably going, nope, keep them unable to leave the planet until they work it out. I would hope that a intergalactic spacefaring community of different species would be that enlightened. To land onto one of my favorite Star Trek memes, there's I reposted this recently on one of my pages, but there's a little tiny monologue that Captain Picard says from whatever season, whatever episode he says it, where he just explains what the Federation's done. It's like, we fixed the problems. There's no more hunger. There's no more greed. There's no more need to abuse each other, because we figured that we don't really need to do that the way we were doing it before. I'm totally butchering. I'm interpreting it. And he's like, that's what we're all about. And honestly, that's what we all... The greatest irony to me is that the human species essentially all wants the same thing, except for the psychopaths and the egomaniacal tyrants that don't, and the people who suck up to them and simp for them and gaslight themselves into supporting them instead of the species. Most of the species wants to be able to do more than just survive, because that's usually kind of miserable. Just eking by in the muck on the scraps of the oligarchs is humiliating, painful, and unnecessary, in my humble opinion. Most human beings of sound mind and body and good heart want to be able to provide for themselves and their loved ones, participate in community, and lift themselves and each other up. So the question is, if you're out there opposing that, and if you're out there opposing that in the name of Jesus Christ, dude, Jesus got a few things on his mind he's going to share with you if and or when you actually get a chance to meet him. And it ain't going to be, good job, pat on the back. You supported a tyrannical maniac that just lined his own pockets selling you garbage made in China whilst chanting about make things in the USA. All right, friends, I've run out of steam. This show is always real, raw, radically unscripted. So yeah, if I kind of spiral out of control, if it takes me 20 minutes to get into my flow, I'm sorry. I ask for you to indulge me in a little patience and to join me in the center of our own imaginations to think things through fairly after having set down and set aside the malarkey ideological constructs that are obviously designed to keep us at each other's throats instead of lifting each other up. Not because I think so, not even because I think that's what Jesus would say if he were here, but because that's what is right and good. And if you're arguing against that, you've got the free speech right to do so. I'm never going to pretend to be a free speech absolutist the way Musk and Trump have, which of course was a lie and hypocrisy, because what did they do? They intimidate, bully, and straight up censor anyone who disagrees with them. The stronger they disagree, the harsher the penalty, apparently. Is that what free speech is? No. Free speech is, I get to say what I want, you get to say what you want, we get to talk about it, and if either of us become egregious and abusive, we get to call that out, and if either of us crosses the line into action, there will be consequences. Because no matter how difficult it is, free speech does mean, and mind you, there's another little caveat real quick before we go about free speech that a lot of self-proclaimed free speech activists do not understand. And I've said it before and I'll say it again, it's a pin on the corkboard. Free speech is protection against oppression and there's another word I wanted to use, but it kind of evaporated right on my tongue. Free speech is protection against oppression by the government. It is not a blank check to spew whatever hate-filled, bigoted, supremacist rhetoric you've decided you want to regurgitate. Free speech is not a guarantee of speech without consequence, especially as you saddle up to the increasing danger zone of egregious speech that prompts action. Free speech protects the schmatzis from being arrested and prosecuted and persecuted without due process, which is, of course, something that MAGA and Trumptopian Republicans want to abolish now, which is ironic because it fits right into their hypocrisy. Free speech for what I want to say, but not for what anybody who opposes me wants to say. Freedom of religion for me to impose my religion on you, but not for anyone else to practice in privacy of their own home and their own temples the religions they've chosen for themselves. That's madness to me. That's madness to me. That's blatant, obvious, painful hypocrisy. And my free speech rights, for as long as I'm able to retain them here, for as long as we are all able to engage in that, protects us from the government disappearing us without due process. It doesn't mean you can't respond. Of course you can respond. If you respond with bigotry and hate and violence, I'm going to call that out. And that's my free speech right to do so. As much as it is any bigot's free speech right to say bigoted things. The thing is, the bigot's free speech rights end where the non-bigot's free speech rights begins. And even more importantly, a bigot's free speech right ends right where it steps up to the line and before it crosses it into prompting bigoted action. You can shout free speech all you want, but if you're inciting bad behavior, we have the right to stop you. If you're inciting behavior that is problematic for the common good, we have the right to stop you. You have the right to say the most outrageous things, and we have the right to say, that's crazy and outrageous. Just like you have the right to say what I'm saying is crazy and outrageous. Now, free speech doesn't have much to say about what to do when both sides are just saying crazy, outrageous things that add up to nothing, that do not resolve the problems. There, we have to turn towards other forms of moral integrity. We should be solving the problems that we ourselves as a species have created, not making more problems. I hope we can agree on at least that. All right, friends, that is what I've got to say about that for now. Thank you for being here. I'm just trying to find the next track. Where's the thing? Oh, here we go. That I want to play my... What? I didn't prepare this earlier. Oh, that's right, because I got to find it. Again, apologies to everybody for the weird mispronunciations and occasional incomprehensible ways in which my Mac desktop robo voice read some of that. It would have sounded better if ChatGPT still had its little reader voice, because that was a much more realistic and eloquent voice. I also apologize to any viewer and any listener for the times where I've spiraled out of control or, sort of lost the thread or mispronounced things. I'm just a Robotnik being from another dimension trapped here amongst you squishy human beings, trying to warn you about your own impending self-destruction. In the book series that I'm writing, which you can hear about in the World Building Project, which is another one of the too many podcasts inside of my podcast of many podcasts. If you go listen to that and respond to that and drop comments to that, your comments, whether they're good, bad, indifferent, critical, questioning, or trolling, will find their way into the book series. That's part of the fun of that experiment. And now that I kind of feel like I'm back on my mojo, I feel like I was really out of it, and now I'm kind of back on it, except for the fact that I'm suffering lots of lower back pain, which is probably not my back, but more like my kidneys being mad at how much coffee I drink. I think I'm finally going to bring myself to confront that writer's block and fear of the blank page. Even if it just means rambling more and not getting much writing done, we're going to start doing more of that here on the live stream. But I invite you to go check out all of my content creation projects by visiting solo.to/ that's the wrong logo, but okay. I dropped my glasses and I feel bad. I'm so sorry, glasses. Anyways, thank you for listening. This has been real, raw, radically unscripted, free speech expression of my own thoughts, concerns, critical thinking, questions, and things that I think I need to speak truth to power to about. Because I am shocked and amazed at how absolutely ridiculous this timeline is. The things we are living through are not what I aspired for in my own future as a young person. And so I got opinions. And I'm trying to make pop art for my own self-commodification, your entertainment, and hopefully your edification. All right, before we go, because I always almost forget to do this, let's pop back on over through the desktop portal of infinity and check out what's going on. Oh, wow. The KBBBS rates has just been all over the place. It's been dropping down as low as whatever that number is, and as high as 9,233. We had a new follower on Twitch yesterday saying, oh no, they were a bot. Never mind. I think Pramley was also a bot. Never mind. Blah, blah, blah. Let's go visit real quick. Where'd you go? TikTok Live. Rick Woodruff joined us recently. Ariel, Trish, Jim Oxo, Scotty, Voodoo, Vermilion. Thank you so much for your viewership. Thank you for dropping in and checking things out. For those of you who don't like to listen to 3-hour-long podcasts, I did not know how much time was going by. That's the first time I've seen a counter. I will be slowly and at my own pace dropping highlight reels and clips from this and other future live stream podcast crossover episodes. And shout out to all my gaming enthusiast friends out there that are probably going, when is he going to stop with all the politics and get back to Call of Duty and other games? Because I know that a bunch of people followed me for that content on Twitch and TikTok and are kind of like meh about this content. But I can't do one without the other. Sorry, not sorry. If I only did one, I would be less than satisfied with my own efforts because I'm passionate about both. I love video games and I love engaging in civilized, public, political, social, spiritual discourse. I hope you'll join me for more. So tune in next time. I'm going to take a break. Probably, I don't know. I'm going to take a break, and when I come back, Call of Duty for our almost daily duty mini session to stay on top of the timeline and keep up with the Joneses. As always, I thank you deeply for tuning in. Shout out to whoever lurked on Twitch. Twitch doesn't give me a name. It gives me an average of 1 viewers, but I know from deeper analytics that it then shows me in the dashboard after the fact that more than one person is watching. It just averages out to one person. So shout out to all of you. Tragically, it doesn't do what TikTok does, so I don't have a cute little list of all the names of all the people that swung by. But if you drop by, thank you so much. If you're watching this in the not too distant future, after the fact, thank you very much for that. Please and thank you. And feel free to make clips yourselves, yo. If you're listening to me right now and you found what I said engaging at any point during the course of this, please, oh please, make a clip, drop it, share it, let me know, tag me in it, and let's get more people involved. And by all means, remember, we are here to do good, not to profiteer on each other's suffering. And as always, I hope and pray that peace, love, and grooviness blossom in your heart. Go out there and be good human beings to each other in the game lobbies, in the public discourse, in the political stages, and anywhere and everywhere where you have an opportunity to be a good human being to yourself and to others. Do your best. You're going to fail. That's life. You know how I know? I've failed a bunch. Hopefully not too egregiously. I have not done any of the horrible things that Donald Trump has done to other people. Categorically free of that problem, I can assure you. I have never done any of the most horrible things that Donald Trump has done. and yeah, that's a flex, I think. I'm going to go ahead and pat myself on the back for that. Mind you, let me end on this. I've said this before and I'll say it again. I have a whole meme. I'm not doing this out of hate. I refuse to hate. I get upset, I get frustrated, I get shocked, I get amazed, I get disappointed, I get angry even at some of the outrageous, crazy things out there being done by people. But I refuse to hate them. Because whether it's Donald Trump or any of his apologist trolls on my social media or criminals committing crimes, they are human beings. And the reason they're behaving that way is because they need healing. That's our calling, friends. Doesn't matter what religion, doesn't matter whether you're an atheist or a this, that, or another. Life is growth and healing. May you find that in your own way. Peace out. Oh, I meant to do this real quick. No, I feel like it was a bit redundant. But thank you very much for tuning in to watch the incorrigible Mr. Zeppo's Almost Daily Variety Gaming Content Creation Live Stream Show Extravaganza. Available live on Twitch and TikTok and on the deep archive over on my YouTube channel. Peace out, I said. And here's the outro music to get out of here.
And that is the latest madness from behind the orange wall. Thank you for listening to GMT, a special segment of the Almost Daily Zencast. Stay woke, Trumptopia. Stay woke.
I really am going to have to come back and do a whole episode about woke versus anti-woke and how absolutely absurd the position as presented by the anti-wokers, how nonsensical it is. They're essentially arguing that human beings should be against human